We are just about to get started. Thank you for your patience. The Lieutenant Governor is in the building. We're excited. Welcome, everybody, to the 2025 Texas Faith and Family Day. My name is Jonathan Sines. I'm the president and attorney for Texas Values. We're the largest faith, family, and freedom organization in the state. We have someone at the Capitol all 140 days of the Texas legislative session. Our office is right across the street from the Capitol, just a block up at 1005 Congress. We want to say thank you to our wonderful friends at Texas Public Policy Foundation for allowing us to use their facilities and their people being such a wonderful and valuable part of this event. As a matter of fact, I want to invite up Andrew Brown just to say a few words as we get started. He is the Vice President of Policy for Texas Public Policy Foundation. Andrew?
Well, good morning, Texas Values. We are so grateful that you all are here for your Family and Freedom Day at the Capitol. And more than that, we are grateful for the partnership of Texas Values and everything that you all do to defend the ideals that make Texas great, and especially the institution of the family. I work on child and family issues here at the foundation, and that means I'm one of the really lucky ones at TPPF who gets to work very, very frequently with Texas Values in advancing things that we have common cause in. You know, last session, I was in the trenches with Jonathan Covey and Mary Castle on SB 14, which prohibits any child from being medically transitioned in the state of Texas. And I can tell you that that bill never would have gotten passed were it not for the great work that Texas Values does and the advocacy and the commitment that they brought to that fight. So we hope y'all have a wonderful summit today. Our home is your home, and just enjoy your time here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And if you'll bow your head with me for just a minute, as a Christian organization, we'd like to start our events with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together today. Thank you for this wonderful state, this community that we live in, this country. Thank you for our President, Donald Trump. Thank you for our Governor, Greg Abbott, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, who will be up in just a minute. And thank you for the just wonderful leaders in our state and the many freedoms that we have. In Jesus Christ's name I pray, amen. And now I want to invite up our good friend Jana Long from Concerned Women for America of Texas to lead us in the pledge to the American flag. It is right here.
It's right here. I'm just going to do this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I'd like to invite up State Representative Hillary Hicklin to lead us in the pledge to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, I am so excited to start this event with our first speaker, who really needs no introduction, but I will just say a few words. He does have a tight schedule. Let me just say this. The standard for faith, family, freedom, and life in the state of Texas of a state elected official is Dan Patrick. His record is unmatched. He is, without question, the leader of our Texas Senate. He has been our lieutenant governor for many years and a friend for many years. And whether it's the life issue, religious freedom, parental rights, school choice, so many different issues, they're in a better position, or they're now in state law, because he came to the Texas Capitol and decided he was going to lead from the front and get things done. Please welcome the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Texas, Dan Patrick.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. A great way to start the day. You know, I don't say this to remind you to pat me on the back. I say this to remind you that we always have to
stand up for the Word of God. When I came in 2007 as a freshman senator, everyone said I wouldn't last one session. We survived, and one more and one more. But the very first thing I noticed was In God We Trust was not in the state Senate. I didn't know how to pass a bill on day 3. They said I wouldn't pass a bill, ever. And see, a lot of people back then, you know, we have to remember how new your movement is to Texas and America. That was 2007 was before the internet. Imagine, before social media, before that connectivity, before grassroots really organized. I mean, there were groups, but nothing cohesive because we didn't really have that connection. And so I came in 2007, and pretty much based on the grassroots of my radio listeners from Houston at that time, and from my television days, and had the folks support me. And they were the same people that kind of became part of the grassroots movement that really blossomed in 2009 with the Tea Party movement. But I looked up and I said, we don't have In God We Trust. This building's been here since the 1880s. Where is it? It was in the House. And I thought, why isn't it in the Senate? So I asked the chair of administration. I didn't even know who to ask. I went up to our parliamentarian. I said, how do I get In God We Trust up there? And they said, well, you have to talk to him, Senator Brimer. And I went to talk to him, and he said, well, you have to talk to a few members. And I went and talked to them. And the next thing I knew, we had unanimous support to put In God We Trust in the Senate chamber, and it's still up there today, of course. And they all said, I know, quietly, how did he figure that out? Why didn't one of us do that? Some of them had been there for 20 years at that time. And then later that session, Debbie Riddle, who was in the House at that time, came to me and she said, I think we should put Under God in our state pledge. And I said, I'm with you, Debbie. And so once again, I walked over and said, I want to put Under God in our pledge. So when you did when Hillary did the Texas pledge, Under God was never in there. The pledge was written, I think, 1934, but it actually was put in there in 2007. So we always kind of have to remind people that God is with us all the time. God is good all the time. And really the first decision you make in life, the most important, is who are you following, him or yourself? Now, it took me a while to figure that out, I will confess. A lot of people, it takes a while for them to figure it out. But that's where we are, and that's who we are. In the Texas Senate, this is really true, and I don't say this to be melodramatic. It's just true. We are a Christ-centered Senate. And Jonathan, I can't see because of the lights where you are. Where's Jonathan? Oh, he stepped out. Okay, he's heard the speech before. There you go. But he knows that to be true. And I won't go through the list of senators because I'll forget all 20 Republicans. But we have serious believers. And you may not know this, and this is really a tribute to the entire Senate. We usually have a chaplain or a pastor of the day. You've been in the Capitol, you know how that works. But when COVID hit, the decision was not to have people coming in from outside because most sessions in 2021, remember the vaccine came out in December of 20, so we were still all really unsure everybody, where are we? You know, it had been around for about 8 months. So I decided, unlike other states that were all meeting by Zoom, almost all the other states didn't want to even show up. We said, we're going to meet. But we didn't think it was a good thing to bring outsiders in every day. And so each senator did the prayer every day from both parties. And it was really an interesting time for us. And it was a binding time for us. And then, you may not know this, no one ever writes these stories, but the last Sunday of session, because we're not here on Sundays except the last Sunday, and the last Sunday we always have church service in the back hall. Members come together, about probably 20 of the 31 members come. Some are actually at church or mass, and members share their favorite passage. Angela Paxton is always a singer. If you know her, she can sing, and some other members. And then we go out on the floor and we all join hands, all 31 of us, and we say the Lord's Prayer. So I say that to let you know that we're not Washington, D.C. That would never happen in Washington, D.C. I say that because that's who we are in Texans, and as Texans. And last night, I'll tell you an interesting story. So we are working on a number of issues, and I'll kind of tick them off in a moment. But one of the things we're doing is trying to make more movies and films in Texas so we don't have California values proliferating what we see. And it will never be a perfect science, but we've been doing it for a little bit of time. and now. And so it's become a big business in Georgia. And we said, why does Georgia get to do all this? Let's Texas do it. So last night we had Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey and Dennis Quaid for dinner in the Lieutenant Governor's dining room with a number of members from the House and the Senate to work on a bill to make sure that we do this in the guidelines that we believe Texas wants. And one of the lines is that we don't do anything that's not appropriate or would be an embarrassment against Texas or put Texas in a bad light. But as we began the dinner, Marion was there with me last night, my staff. Wave, Marion. Marion's my Deputy Chief of Staff. She's been with me for 17 years as my Education Director. And then Darrell Davila is my Chief of Staff. Wave, Darrell. So they were there. It was just 10 of us for dinner. We had Todd Hunter and Greg Bonin and Ken King and then Joan Huffman. So the key people in this bill. And I had made a Christian film in 2009 called The Heart of Texas. And it's an incredible story. It did very well at the time. It was just a documentary. And I had sent a copy to Matthew McConaughey, who lives here in Austin full-time. Can you all shut that door back there for me? Tom, can you shut? Thank you. And so I'd sent it to him 2 years ago just to see it because we were just getting to know each other. And he brought it up, and it's a Christian film. And so there at that table last night, we spent the first 15 minutes, Marion, talking about Jesus. It's just kind of an amazing thing. I didn't know he was going to bring it up. It wasn't for me to speak. It was for the members to hear from them and their thoughts. So anyway, God is good all the time, and Texas is good all the time because Texas focuses on the Word of God, I think, as much as any place in the world, quite frankly. So we'll always go to that guide. I say this and forgive my a little bit of, I think we all have a little bit of a voice issue these days with some of the stuff that's going around. But one of the things I always say in my speech is that our number one lobbyist in the Texas Senate is God. Okay, you're a great lobbyist, by the way. We really need you, and I thank Jonathan for this organization. Thank all of you for supporting. It's really important to have your backup on so many issues. So members here were, because you represent millions of people in Texas. They all can't come. So you're here representing them, just like I am. And when it's a tough issue and you say, okay, are we going here, are we going there? That's who I go to, and that's who I think a lot of our members go to. Where would God be on this issue? You know, there are, I think the last count, 1,500 lobbyists here in the state. There are 181 legislators, 150 in the House. And by the way, when I first, is there any water anywhere, a bottle of water if you have one? When I first got elected, I said, why are there 150 House members and 31 senators? Why those two numbers? And there's nothing in our history books, and we've looked, we've researched it. And I know 2 of you, or 3 of you, or 5 of you are already thinking, thank you very much. By the way, this little bottle, I'll have to tell you a funny story. So Monday, I'll get back to that in a minute. So Monday, before I came up here, I went to Costco. I love going to Costco.
Here's backup, too.
Oh, backup, thank you very much. So my wife was with me, and I said, I'll get you some water. And I thought, 80 bottles, that's pretty good, really heavy. So I put 2 80-bottle cartons in the car, in the basket in the car. I get home. I bought 160 of these size bottles. My wife said, you're not picking out the water anymore. So it takes 3 of these for 1 big one, by the way. So, and she says, so now I have to twist 3 times as much? I said, yeah, you kind of have to do that. Hold on, let me take a drink here. Anyone have a thought? I want young people, let young people answer, the students here. Anyone know why we might have 150 House members and 31 senators, where their numbers came from? Yes, sir, raise your hand.
Senators, I think, were 2 for each state.
No, that's the U.S. Senate, but that's good. Most adults don't know that in a lot of blue states. Okay. So the only thing we can figure out, there are 150 Psalms and 31 Proverbs. Oh, I got a lot of, I thought some of you knew that. And look, we don't know that for sure, but doesn't it make sense? Because 31's a really odd number to pick. Most states have 50, 60, 70 senators, even small states. And of course, our senators have a lot to do. They represent 1 million people each. I mean, think about all the small states in the country. 5 senators would cover almost every state, more than half the states. Like Iowa, they have 3 million people. So that's 3 of our senators. And if you didn't know this, just for the young people here, every district has to be the same. So one senator can't have 1.5 million and another senator have 400,000. Everyone has to be as close to 1 million as you can. So when you're in West Texas, like Kevin Sparks and Charles Perry, of our 254 counties, they cover 84 counties between them. Because they have to, and that's why you see some of these, like Charles Perry goes from Lubbock almost to Austin at all points in between, because you got to get the population. Where when I was a senator in Houston, or Paul Betancourt now, his 1 million people are just in 1/3 of Harris County. So everybody has to have the same thing for the House members. So anyway, and for me, besides always going to our best lobbyists, our wisest lobbyists, God is, for me, it's real simple. When it comes down to a vote, I'd rather be voted out of office than voted out of heaven. Okay? It's a real, make that a bumper sticker. Tell your folks, you want to be voted out of office or voted out of heaven? That'll get them thinking. Jonathan, I think you can turn that into a shirt or something like that. Yeah, something. Yeah. So a little bit about the session. So we have a new speaker, and I was very public with how the process went. But so far, so good. But they haven't passed a bill yet, so we'll see. Okay. I'm hopeful. We have already passed in the Senate. We've already passed out to increase your homestead on your property taxes from $100,000 to $140,000, which will save you another. When I came in in 2015, the homestead exemption was $15,000. It had been that forever, and I took it to. I say I don't have many I's in this, but this is one thing I've always kind of been focused on. So we as the Senate went to 25,000 in the first session. Then we went to 40,000. And then last year we went to 100,000. So now go to 140,000. So for people in 490 school districts, we've almost wiped out their M&O school taxes, because the value of the homes in the smaller counties tend to be around $150,000 to $180,000. So we almost wiped out their school taxes. And for people, if you live in a $300,000 house, which is the average in a lot of our suburbs these days, or a little higher, so we've just cut your school taxes in half. So we're going to continue to do that. Secondly, you're welcome with that. Secondly, we passed school choice. Brandon Creighton. We passed it in the Senate 5 times. This is our 6th time. And the new speaker, Dustin Burrows, says he's going to pass it. It was really funny. I went to the White House a month ago for a school choice meeting. And it was Sarah Huckabee from Arkansas, and the governor of Tennessee, and the governor of Louisiana, and the governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, and some school choice leaders. So it was about a dozen of us, and we had a wonderful lunch with the president and talked about school choice. And he said, and at some point, when you're sitting at a group like that, you kind of have to say, Mr. President, because everybody's talking. So at some point, you jump in the pool. And I said, Mr. President, because of you and your support last session, of the people that we defeated, who blocked the bill last session in the House, the Republicans, there were I think 21, I forget the exact number, but we took out, I think, 15 of them, and the others retired, most of them. And I said, if it weren't for you, we would not be in a position to launch the biggest school choice program in America, $1 billion and 100,000 students in the first year, which would be next school year. And I said, but we still have to keep working on it. He said, will you let me know if there's anyone, because he's made it an issue of his administration, you let me know if there's anyone that's going to be a no vote. So I said, I will. So he said, just send me a little note on that. I did. So he tweeted out about our launch of the school choice bill. It's time for school choice in America. And he said, and I'll be watching the Texas House very closely. Okay? So I have to read this to you so I can get this right. Give me 1 second here. So along the way, at the inauguration, I met for the first time Elon Musk. And I'll have to tell you a funny story. I walked in to meet with him, and we sat down for about a 20-minute meeting, and he said, would you like a Doge hat? And I said, sure. So he took the one off his head and gave me his. Now, I have a big head. Okay? I'm 7 3/4. His hat fit me perfectly. So his head is 7 3/4. But that's where the similarities end. Because there's nothing in here like he's got in there. So about 2 weeks later, he sent me a text about something. The first time I got a text from him, and I said, I answered the question, and I said, by the way, would you tweet something out about school choice? And would you put Dustin Burrows' name in it? This is what he tweeted out, okay? So he's brilliant but simple in his words. I hope Dustin Burrows passes school choice in Texas to give kids a chance. If kids only have one school option and it's bad, then they never had a chance. Isn't that good? Simple. Now, when I put out a tweet, if it's kind of not big news, but a regular, I might get 10,000, 20,000. If I have something really good, like when I went to the lottery a few weeks ago, if you saw that, and I did my investigative reporting, that got like 200,000 views. That's a lot for me. When he tweeted that out in 12 hours, it had 6 million. Of course, he has 218 million followers. He owns it, of course we know. So, but I just thought it was so simple. So really kind of cool. So school choice we passed, property tax cut. Last week, Joan Huffman, our chair of finance and a former criminal court justice and criminal court judge and prosecutor in Harris County, she carries our law enforcement bill, our sex trafficking bills, which is horrendous in Texas and elsewhere in the country. And we passed 4 bail reform bills. Let me tell you how bad it is in Harris County. In Harris County, the 3rd largest, I think, in the country now, biggest in Texas, there are 1,657 people charged with murder waiting for a trial. 1,657 in one county. And 800 of those are out on bond. 800. And according to our statistics, 161 people since 2021 have been killed in Harris County by people who had already been arrested before and let out. Now, Harris County is the only county that keeps the data, keeps the stats. Well, actually, we have a bill to force every county to do it, every big county, because I'm sure it's very similar in the big blue counties. So the bail reform is very important. So we passed those 4 bills out. Very important for your safety, because you're going to say, well, I don't live in a big county. By the way, they travel to your county. 20% of the people in jail in Montgomery County, the northern county, have residences in Harris County. And we had someone testify, the county judge or the DA from Comal County, someone who had left a big county, charged with murder and had traveled all the way through Comal, killed another person on the way to San Antonio to kill another person. So one goes everywhere. It's not like, oh, they're just there, we're okay where we are. So we have to address that. And then yesterday we passed a bill that's close to my heart, and that is our investment in research and prevention for Alzheimer's. That passed yesterday 30-1. And 11 years ago or 12 years ago, we passed a bill called CPRIT, Cancer Prevention and Research. In Texas, we're blessed that we, on occasion, have the dollars to invest that other states do not. And we're also blessed to have some of the best researchers in the country in cancer, particularly through MD Anderson and other hospitals. But we put $3 billion into a 10-year, so $300 million a year, to attract the best researchers in the world. Because if a researcher is going to move to Texas to do their research on cancer, for example, they have to know that the money's not going to dry up in a year or two. So we made a big commitment. And so yesterday, and I'm sure this will pass the House, we passed it. Same type of program, a $3 billion program, $300 million a year to $300 million to bring the best and the brightest researchers for Alzheimer's dementia, which is quite frankly, we have to have some breakthroughs. We've had some breakthroughs in the cancer research that have literally saved lives. And so I hope none of you have had anyone in your family or a friend who's had Alzheimer's, but you know, if that happens, the whole family's life stops. It's a disease that impacts the family more than the person who has it. Obviously, it impacts that person tremendously. So that was a big lift for us. Another major bill that I want to pass this session is we've got to get rid of these 8,000 locations who are selling THC drugs to children and to adults all over our state. Most people don't know how bad it is, but when the hemp bill passed a few years ago, it was to basically the CBD stores and to limit that to a very, very small level. And we had compassionate use for people who have PTSD or children who have epileptic episodes. But some chemist came up with a way to go around the bill. And basically, you can go to any of these smoke shops anywhere in Texas, and you can walk in there and buy something that is 5 to 10 times more potent than marijuana you would buy from a drug dealer. And there's no age limit to stop it. And to tell you how this has proliferated, 3 years ago, none of these stores existed. Today, we have 8,000. In fact, Austin has the most. In fact, if you walk around Austin, you'll see some weed vending machines. So Delta 8 and Delta 9, that's what it's called. So Jonathan, we need the support of this because a lot of members don't know how severe it is. And then I alluded to my video a little earlier on the lottery. Just to tell you very quickly, if you don't know this, in April of 2023, the jackpot had risen to $95 million. Okay? One person from somewhere in Europe, we think Malta, bought 26 million $1 tickets. They bought all of the combinations, almost all the combinations, to win the lottery. And they did. So think of how you get a jackpot to to 95 million. The state doesn't write that check. Everybody buying lottery tickets. I think it took a year to build that big. So it is the biggest theft in the history, maybe of the United States, that someone came in and stole $95 million in a rigged game. The other option, if it wasn't someone who was sure they were going to win, is it's money laundering at a grand scale. And for those of you who don't know what money laundering is, if you steal $100,000 and it's ill-gotten gains, whether you sold drugs or whatever you did to get $100,000, you try to launder it by getting rid of some of that money. And it usually costs you money to get rid of some of that money so you have some of it clean. And so if you bought $26 million in lottery tickets and you win 2 out of 3, it means you lost, but they're okay losing 5 or 6 million to have a clean 20 million, if that makes sense to you. So I believe it's not only and it could be the cartels, it could be terrorists, but the Lottery Commission, we passed laws that you could not have courier services. We passed laws you could not sell tickets to a foreign group. We passed laws that kids couldn't buy tickets. And the people at the Lottery Commission broke every rule. And so when I went up to that store a few weeks ago where someone hit an $83 million lottery through a courier service, I decided to look into it. And that one may be legitimate, don't know. May just have been someone lucky who bought their ticket there. But if I said to you, lottery courier, I think everyone thinks a lottery courier is like Grubhub for lottery tickets. Like you call them, they come, pick up your tickets. No, it's an app on your phone. There is no such thing as a courier. It was a phony baloney name to cover up what they were doing. And so imagine going into Stop and Go where you should be buying your tickets. I don't mean it should be, but I mean that's where you're supposed to. Stores like that, they have 2 terminals. Imagine if they had 40 behind the wall, printing out tickets, and that's what these couriers are doing all over the state. So the whole thing is corrupt in my view. I'm not sure if it's money laundering. I'm not sure if it were, whiz kids who figured out how to fix the game and found people to put up $26 million. But we have a Texas Ranger investigation on it, and it's a very serious issue. I don't know if the lottery will survive past June or not, but there are a lot of changes that have to happen. Yeah. How many people just want the lottery to go away? Okay. Yeah. It's pretty much everywhere I go. That's kind of the response I get. So we'll see, because lottery is up for sunset. What that means, for those of you who don't know, every 12 years, every agency is up for sunset, for review, to either eliminate them or just improve them, find efficiencies. It just so happens this year, the Lottery Commission, it's their year they're up. And so if we don't pass the bill to renew them, they're done. It's over. So we're going to look at this Texas Ranger investigation, a very serious issue. I'll close with this. Some really big issues this session. We always focus on life issues and family issues, but there's some which get the headlines and important, and we'll follow through and we'll do those things. But this is an issue about three big things that impact all your lives. Number one, water. We spent about an hour and a half with our members in a meeting yesterday over looking at Charles Perry's water plan. We're running out of water, folks. You know, we have droughts in parts of the state. It's a massive, massive investment. You know, there were 18 million Texans in 2000. There are 30 million today. So we've added 12 million people in the last 24 years, and we're projected to add another 15 million by 2045. So we are short of water. Industry uses water. Industry is moving here. So we're going to make a major investment. We've put $3 billion into water the last 3 years, but the projected cost to fill all of our water needs is somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $70 billion by the year 2050 or 60. So that's a serious issue for us, and we're working on that. Leaky pipes are a big problem, number one. We have a lot of leaky pipes around. I think the city of Houston loses about 20% of all the water they produce that comes from the lakes. Number two, the grid. We have got to be sure, and we've taken a lot of steps since Winter Storm Uri, but we can't give up on that, because just as we need more water, we need more power. And so that's a major issue. Again, not sexy issues, not headline issues, but things that really impact. If you don't have water, if our farmers don't have water, if our ranchers don't have water. Right now our cattle herd is usually around, our beef cattle about 6 million. We're down to 4.5 million because of the drought in West Texas. So that's the reason beef is a little high, because we have less cows and people still buy steak. And then the other is affordable housing. We need to, whether it's the insurance you pay, the property tax that we're focused on, or just having an area where you can have affordable house. We have counties like this one or Dallas or others where school teachers and policemen can't live in the county they work in because the housing is so expensive. So those are three big issues. And the last thing, on a light note, and I'll go back to Twitter and how you never know what reactions you get. So I met with the cattle feeders and the cattle ranchers last week or the week before. You know, all the groups come in our office and what they need and what they want, and, you know, stop this bill, pass this bill, help us here, help us there. That's kind of what we do. And a lot of wants and a lot of needs. We try to separate the wants from the needs. So when it was over, I said, by the way, you all raise cattle. What's your favorite cut of beef? And so somebody said T-bone, someone said, you know, filet, and two guys back to back said New York strip. And I said, why do we call it New York strip? Shouldn't it be Texas strip? So they said, great idea. So I said, okay, we're going to call it Texas strip. And so we're going to pass a concurrent resolution with the House. And the reason it's called New York strip, by the way, is a restaurant in the 19th century in New York called Delmonico's decided to call that cut of beef New York strip. Well, I don't care about New York. That's a Texas strip. So remember what I said about Twitter, that, you know, I usually get, you know, a normal bill, 20,000 people, you know, 30,000, a big thing, you know, I get a lot. So I thought, okay, if I tweet this out, some people are going to say, I know what they're going to say, Dan, we sent you there to do serious business, and you're worried about calling a New York strip a Texas strip. So I made sure when I put the tweet out that they understood it's good for our economy. We want to brand Texas beef. We want everything we make or grow in Texas to be known as from Texas. It's good for Texas. So I tweeted that out, and the last time I looked, we had over 200,000 people that gave thumbs up to calling it Texas beef. So thank you for coming today. I've got to get back to work at the Capitol. Jonathan, again, you had stepped out of the room because you've heard my speech before for a minute, but I said, if it weren't for this group, a lot of the things on pro-life issues and stopping bad bills would never, and pro-family issues would never have passed, so thank you. But I don't know what you're going to be doing this summer, but when session's over, whenever that is, I'm going to get on a cruise ship. I'm going to sail across the Gulf of America and have myself a Texas trip. God bless you all. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, what a treat and honor. As he's leaving, make him hear your voices and clap. Come on, we can do better. There we go. There we go. There we go. Yeah, that's the Texas and Texans that I know. You know, when the lieutenant governor is supportive of the legislation you're working on, your chances go up dramatically in the work that we do. And so anytime we can have him a part of our events, and we've got some other great groups that are part of this event, Christians Engaged, Concerned Women for America of Texas, Texas Homeschool Coalition, partner groups that are under our umbrella, Texas Values Action, Church Ambassador Network of Texas, our good friends at Texas Pastor Council. We also have a friend, too, that's doing a little bit more work stateside. I want to let him come up for just a minute. Alliance Defending Freedom is a national organization. Probably known them, working on a lot of litigation. They were my attorney when I sued the University of Houston for the free speech rights and religious rights of the pro-life group I was winning, and we did win that case. But they're also now getting involved in supportive efforts at the state legislature. So in leading those efforts is our good friend Ryan Bangert from Alliance Defending Freedom. I'll let him come up, say a few things about what they're working on.
Man, we just love Jonathan. He's one of our clients that turned out really well, don't you think? Man, what an honor to be here with all of you, with Texas Values. I mean, man, what a effective organization that's standing for truth and freedom. What a great organization to partner with. So thank you. And man, aren't we fortunate to have a leader like Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who's just putting so much fire downrange for the things that we believe in. I just want to come to you. I just got off the plane last night at 10 o'clock from Washington, D.C. And let me tell you, Texas is setting the pace around the country and really around the globe. ADF does work all over the country and all over the world. How many of you listened to J.D. Vance's speech in Munich, where he took the EU leadership to task for basically stomping all over freedom of speech? In the middle of that speech, what J.D. Vance said was, he says, look at the UK and look at the case of Adam Smith Connor, a man who stood silently on a sidewalk. And he was praying in his mind, didn't say a word, just praying silently in his mind, was approached by law enforcement and said, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm praying because a few years ago, my girlfriend and I made the tragic choice to abort our unborn son at that abortion clinic just down the road. They said, come with us. You just violated the UK's buffer zone law, and they prosecuted him criminally for thought crimes. That's happening in the Western world right now. And that's actually, Adam Smith Connor is an ADF client. We represent him. And it was just really incredible to see J.D. Vance get up there in front of world leaders and point to someone like Adam Smith Connor and say, look what you're doing to a man of faith. And that's the leadership that we have in the United States Capitol and the White House right now. But let me tell you something. Just because we have excellent leadership in the White House does not mean the fight is over. It does not mean the fight is over. In fact, it means that we have a narrow window of opportunity right now to build the foundation, to build the institutions that will ensure freedom and ensure that our children and our children's children have a fighting chance and that faith and family are secure. And it starts right here in Texas. There's a philosopher, I was over in London 2 weeks ago at the ARC conference, and we were talking with world leaders about several of these faith and family issues. And there's a philosopher named Matthias Desmond, not a Christian, but he's very perceptive. And he said, you know, there's this thing called mass psychology. Everyone goes crazy all at once. And his example was COVID. Literally everyone went nuts. And you had a few elites who were just true believers. And you had about 80% of the population who just went along with it because they didn't really know how to think about the issues. And then he said the problem is you need to have that small number of people who stand up, who see clearly, and who speak truth into a world filled with lies. And you look at people like Michael Schellenberger, you look at people like Aaron Kheriaty, people who got canceled off of Twitter at the behest of the White House because they were speaking out against COVID madness. Texas is that for the world. Texas stands up and it says, look, we know that you think boys should be in women's bathrooms. We know that you think boys should play women's sports. We know that you think we need to have a safe space on social media so that conservative voices can't be heard, but we're not going to stand for that here in Texas. And that's exactly the work that Jonathan's doing. So we are working right now at the state capitol on a number of issues: debanking, preventing large banks from removing the accounts of conservatives, ensuring the conscience of medical professionals is protected so they don't have to perform abortions and gender transition surgeries against their conscience, ensuring that men are not walking into women's facilities and terrorizing women simply because these men believe that they are the opposite sex. So these are the issues Texas is leading on. We've got to continue to put the foot to the gas, because there's no better time than now to ensure that this mass psychology, this sort of spell that we've been under for the last 4 years, is broken. It has to start right here with Jonathan and his friends. And so we're so happy to partner with him. Thank you so much for being a part of this important work.
Thank you, Ryan. Real quick, raise your hand if you've never been to the Texas Capitol. It's okay. I know there's some people in the crowd. Now, there's a guy right here. People are like, all right. I see my mom's in the crowd. She's been to the Capitol. Hi, Mom. We got a little girl over here. How old are you, sweetheart? 6. Love it. Wonderful. Always have to have some first-timers at this event. That's what we're all about. We're going to go there this afternoon after we have lunch. Okay, I'm sorry that I have to tell y'all this. Riley Gaines is not going to be able to make it today. You will understand why in a couple of days. I'm just telling you. She got a call from up high. That's all I can say. But she took the time to put a video together. Do we have the video ready? So, Save Women's Sports leader, Riley Gaines, if you'll direct your attention to the screen.
Hey, Texas Values, friends and family. I am so bummed that I cannot be there in person. I had every intent on being there, but these past few months especially, really these past few years, I have just really decided to put myself in a position where I will be where I need to be to ultimately accomplish what needs to be done for the movement, for the mission. And I have found myself in New York today, very last minute. So all of that to say, I wish I was there in person with you all, but that does not stop me from sending a message of encouragement and, of course, a message of support to Texas Values and everyone who supports Texas Values. We've seen a lot of legislative wins over the past 2-3 years in the state of Texas. Of course, number one, we saw Valerie Swanson in the House and Senator Mays Middleton in the Texas Senate pass wonderful legislation protecting the rights of women, of female athletes, protecting the innocence, the safeguarding the innocence of children, protecting parental rights. We've seen phenomenal wins and common sense by Representative Troxclair in the House introducing the Women's Bill of Rights. Crazy. This bill, it falls in line with President Trump's executive order declaring there are only 2 genders. Insane stuff. I cannot believe we have to say such out loud. But in the state of Texas, it will soon be recognized that there is only male and female, and it clearly defines them. For those of you who don't know yet how to answer the question, what is a woman, which I know Representative Troxclair does, the answer is an adult human female. So exciting things to come there. We have seen some champions in the state of Texas for school choice, which is a battle, of course, that goes hand in hand with the gender ideology movement, and again, how parents are being affected, and most importantly, how children are being impacted at the hands of unelected bureaucrats and officials. Someone in Texas recently used the word educrat, which I like that word, unelected educrats. So we thank Governor Abbott for everything he has done to really champion universal school choice in the state of Texas. We've already seen 13 other states implement such, and so we are hoping that Texas is next, which it's well on its way to be. So all very exciting things. I know there are more wins to come. Texas continues to lead the way. One more thing I want to mention, one more person I want to shout out is Attorney General Paxton. He has continued to be at the forefront, really leading the movement, the radical gender ideology movement, and pushing back. He's even now announced more lawsuits into the NCAA, which is just phenomenal. The NCAA is filled with totally spineless cowards, if you haven't figured that out by now. So we thank AG Paxton, we thank Governor Abbott, we thank all of our wonderful legislators in the state of Texas, and of course, we thank Texas Values for putting these people in those positions, for championing them, for supporting them, and doing the legwork. I've said it before and I will say it again, Texas Values is on the ground, every day of the week. They're in the state capitol, they're testifying, they're drafting legislation. Sorry, I'm in the airport. I'm always in the airport. But Texas Values, we love you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You will always have a fan and a friend in me. Thanks, guys.
Don't worry, there's a very good chance she'll be back at the Texas Capitol before the session's over because she's so committed to the work that we're doing. Also want to recognize a few of our other partners I didn't mention in the list. Our friends at Faith and Freedom Coalition. Our friend Don Garner is going to be here. He'll chat in a minute. And then is Vanessa Sivich here? Was the nurse Vanessa here yet with Protecting Texas Children? She'll be addressing y'all a little bit later. Now, there will be some shuffling of the schedule, okay, because members are involved in work, House and Senate members. You never know what's going on, so y'all bear with me. We do have a set schedule, but some things have changed. Lieutenant Governor had a little bit more time, and so we were happy to indulge him to let him share a lot more with y'all, and so I appreciate that. But I say it a lot. You want to summarize what it's like to work in our business in the Capitol? Hurry up and wait. Hurry up. I mean, you never know how things are going to move, so you got to be prepared for that. If you'll allow me, since I'll take that liberty right now, because we did have an elected official, if he's ready to go, we'll just go ahead and bring him up, because this is what's going on right now. Members are moving in and out of committee hearings. They're in and out of meetings, so we really have to get them up to the stage when we can, because we are a couple of blocks away over from the Capitol. So if you'll hang on, Les Bernal, you're next, but just a second, we're going to shift here, and I'm going to make an introduction. Our next speaker is Senator Mays Middleton. Boy, I tell you what, in the House, and certainly since he's gotten to the Senate, he has made it clear that he's here to lead, he's here to get work done, and he knows what he's doing. He does his homework, very prepared, but also someone who just has a tremendous demeanor about the way that he does things in the floor and committee. And, he's not looking for small wins. He's looking to make differences. He's looking to change, Texas into the leader and continue to stamp it as the leader of faith, family, and freedom. And he was the author of our bill last session on Save Women's Sports for collegiate level in Texas. That's law. And now he's filed a bill to protect the privacy of women in showers, locker rooms, bathrooms, because we know how big of a problem that is. Please welcome to the stage Senator Mays Middleton.
Hey, I appreciate y'all coming to your Texas Capitol. The left has just had this war against God and government, right? And that is what we're correcting right now. All these many decades of really great wrongs, because it was a group of litigious atheists that really decided for all of us that we did not get the right to pray in our public schools. And that was one of the great victories we had last session, and we passed it in the Senate. Unfortunately, didn't make it in the House, but this week we had Coach Kennedy in the Education Committee in the Senate, and we voted out SB 11, which restores prayer in our public schools. So that's Senate Bill 11. And our schools are not God-free zones, right? And of course, a great education is about reading and math, but it's also about character and values as well. And that's what we're fighting to restore, on top of making sure that kids have a great education. You've got to also ask, are we better or are we worse off since prayer was taken out in the 1960s. And I think we all know the answer to that, and that's why so many of you are here today. And I love working with Texas Values in this mission. Jonathan is a champion. We've had so many great victories on faith, family, and freedom. You know, last session with the Save Women's Sports Act, where the radical left was trying to say that men pretending to be women had rights greater than women themselves, right? And this is ridiculous. Of course, President Trump took a strong stand on that with his executive order as well. But we passed that law in the great state of Texas, where we kicked men out of women's college sports forever in the great state of Texas. And we need to keep at that, right? Because, you know, Macy and I were blessed with 4 little ones, Connor, Christian, Matthew, little girl Martha Ann. And we have to protect our innocent children and make sure that they get to know the Texas and the America that we all grew up in. And of course, that is based on the foundation of In God We Trust. That's what everything has to be built on. In fact, in our Texas Constitution, the preamble of it says, humbly invoking the blessings of Almighty God, right? And that is why we're here today, to go fight for that foundation and make sure that that next generation gets to experience those religious liberties and freedoms. And a lot of it is common sense too, like Jonathan mentioned earlier. It is not common sense to let a man go into a woman's restroom or locker room or shower. I'm sorry. And we need to make sure that never happens again. That's why I filed the Texas Women's Privacy Act. You know, the left even was trying to let men into family violence shelters and even into dorms and overnight trips, right? So they were letting boys identify as girls and go in the girls' bedrooms at night, literally. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we're up against. We've got to keep our families safe. You know, as a dad to a 3-year-old, we cannot allow this. You know, I don't think there's any dad or mom out there that's okay with a man going into the restroom with their little girl, right? It's wrong, it's dangerous, and frankly, it allows predators to take advantage of our society and put people at risk. But I want to thank y'all for coming out today. I love Texas Values. Y'all are the tip of the spear of fighting for faith, family, and freedom in our state government. They're there in every committee hearing. Jonathan is a champion. Mary Elizabeth Castle, I think, is here as well. Everything that we believe in with those conservative Christian values, you know, Texas Values is leading the charge on that. So I'm so grateful for all your advocacy and support on that. You know, sometimes you don't know if you're going to win, right? But it's a simple formula. It's do the right thing, work hard, and leave the results to God. And that's why we're here today, and that's what we stand for. So God bless you. God bless the great state of Texas. Thank you for having me today.
Well, what an honor to have him over. Thank you, Senator Middleton. A little bit louder, a little bit louder. There we go. There we go. Okay, we're going to keep it moving. Like I said, we might have to shift. Members, think about this, okay? When you're hearing things talked about today, all right, bills, like in this booklet, if everybody got a folder, there's a list of different bills in there. We've got a back and forth that lists a lot of our priorities. Other groups have some of theirs too. So you're going to hear us talk about those things. The bill he just talked about has a bill number. And the next issue we're going to talk about, it's impacting over the Capitol. So when you hear these things, just take it all in, because when we go to the Capitol the second half of the day, you're going to want to remember some of those things and use that information. All right, so next we're going to have Les Bernal come up and speak. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. We heard some of the words from the Lieutenant Governor about the issue, the expansion of gambling, if you will. They want to put casinos in wherever they can in Texas. We know it's already about to happen in Dallas. If you haven't heard what's happening with the owner of the Dallas Mavericks and so on, there's a real issue. There's over 200 lobbyists at the state capitol that are lobbying to have casinos and all things that are going to negatively impact people and our society in a variety of ways. Someone who knows a lot about that is Les Bernal. Please come up. He's going to talk to you about this issue.
Megan, is there a clicker from the slides?
I think she's going to.
Okay.
She might have just got it.
Okay. All right. Just going to wait 1 minute. I have a few slides I want to share with you before I begin. What's that? Okay, sure. Well, while we're doing that, I'll just kind of start with kind of my little background on who we are. So I have about a 10-minute window, and I'm going to try to tell you talk about an issue that most of us kind of know instinctively is wrong, but we really know very little about this. Like, most of us have very little understanding about predatory gambling in America today, as well as here in Texas. And that's my goal in the next 10 minutes, is to get you fired up and understand why it should be in your top 5 issues. The title of my talk today is going to be Love versus Greed: Why Texas Citizens Need to Oppose the Introduction of Online Gambling, Slot Machines, and Other Extreme Forms of Predatory Gambling in the state. And so when the first slide that I have up there is, and I don't need to have it up there just to talk about this, is people ask me, Les, what drives you on the issue of gambling? Why have you dedicated the prime years of your life to fight the issue of commercialized gambling in America today? The story I always tell is, we all grow up, you're in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. One of the core principles you learn in elementary school is the principle of no taxation without representation, right? No matter where you live in the country today, like that's a bedrock democratic principle in our country today. And I say Democrat with a small d. It's who we are as a people. No taxation without representation. Well, today, no matter pretty much whatever state you live in our country, including here in Texas, we have a system of taxation by exploitation, okay? The Texas Lottery is a system of taxation by exploitation. Wherever you live today, that is the commercialized gambling, advertising, and marketing is what we advertise to the American people more than anything else. When I was a kid growing up, we used to advertise John Wayne coming on camera. He'd say, invest in your country, buy you a savings bond. Today, during the holiday season here in Texas and elsewhere, during the holiday season, the dominant voice on your radio and TV was buy scratch-off tickets. It's a perfect stocking stuffer for your family and coworkers. Like, that's a government program, and that's Republicans and Democrats, the establishment of both parties, pushing this. Okay, and we're getting close. I see it up there. Thank you for your help with this. So that's what drives me. It's time. The time has come to put the principle of no taxation by exploitation right alongside the principle of no taxation without representation. So I'm going to move to the third slide is one where I just define what predatory gambling is not. Okay, because you'll have gambling lobbyists and stand up and talk about all the gambling that's happening around the country. So what predatory gambling is not, okay, it's this slide here. It's not the Friday night poker game with the guys from work. It's not the buying a square in the Super Bowl office pool. It's not the local Catholic parish bingo night. It's not a friendly wager on the golf course. It's not those are social forms of gambling. There's no house involved, okay? So those are social forms of gambling. Next slide, please. What predatory gambling is, okay, it's when powerful gambling interests partner with state governments, like here in Texas, to use commercialized gambling, okay, to exploit and defraud citizens in their communities. Okay, it's running gambling as a business, okay? And when you run gambling as a business, unlike any other business, it creates a predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and its customer. They're trying to take you down. All right? There's no other business in America that's trying to destroy you. If you have some barbecue tonight for dinner, that barbecue restaurant owner, he's not trying to destroy you. He's not trying to take every last dollar from you. This is a business based on taking you down. And we're doing this as an extension of a government program. Next slide, please. So in its core, what predatory gambling is, we call this whole phenomenon, whether it's a lottery, whether it's online gambling, whether it's the proposal for a regional casino, the whole concept, we call it the big con. The way they promote the issue is the big con. The idea it's going to lower your taxes somehow, or it's some kind of form of economic development. The actual business itself is a con. And the reason why it's con, so imagine you take a highly addictive product, which commercialized gambling is, like fentanyl, opioids, OxyContin, tobacco, harmful to your health. Take a product like that, and then you combine it with a financial scheme that is a ripoff, that's manipulative and deceitful. And then that's what you have. It's the big con. That's what predatory gambling is. It's an addictive product blended with a ripoff financial scheme. It's a con. And you, the taxpayer, whether you gamble or not, you pay for all this financially, and you pay for it in your communities and your families. Next slide, please. So I always get the question, how is commercialized gambling like casinos and the lottery? How is it different like any other business? Okay, well, if you go have a barbecue dinner tonight, as I said earlier, you go to the movies, you go to a football game, you pay for a ticket, that's a one-for-one exchange. Okay, when you participate in commercialized gambling, what it is at its core, it wraps it up as a financial, as entertainment, but at its core, it's a financial exchange that's mathematically stacked against you. So this slide to your left is from the best book called Addiction by Design. It's the best graphic I've ever seen kind of describing it. You start with a whole bunch of money, but over time, you're guaranteed, mathematically, you're going to lose all your money. Okay, it's a guarantee. We do this as a government program. In order for Texas Lottery to make money, the people of Texas have to lose, okay? It's like putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank, all right? That's what we've done, okay? All right? And so so we say that it's a cliche. We all kind of joke like the house always wins. What that means is you're going to get beat. It's the con. Next slide, please. All right? So this problem, the reason why I've dedicated my life to this, and this is the reason why this should be on your top 5 issues that you're passionate about in your community, in your state, okay, and in our country, is this is America's most neglected major problem. And predatory gambling is Texas's most neglected major problem. I'm going to give you 5 quick facts. Number 1, and probably maybe most importantly, is it exploits and manipulates kids. All right. Today, with online sports gambling, you can't watch a sporting event without your kids being inundated with sports gambling ads. Kids growing up used to collect sports cards, baseball cards. Now kids 12 years old, 13-year-olds in states that have legalized online sports gambling, they're placing bets with their friends, through their older brothers. They're using these virtual private networks to place bets on these apps. Kids, we have an epidemic of gambling addiction amongst kids and young adults across our country today. Okay. Totally manufactured by state governments partnering with powerful gambling corporations. Number 2, this is a business that perpetuates poverty and financial ruin. This is a business model based on financial harm. Okay, people compare it to the stock market. You put $10,000 into the stock market over 20 years, that money's going to grow. Try putting $10,000 into $100 scratch-off tickets sold by the Texas Lottery. Okay, you're going to lose all that money. Okay. Third, inflicts life-changing addictions. The business model for lotteries, like here in Texas, and for casinos and online gambling, it's based on addicted citizens. It's about turning your family members, your coworkers, your neighbors, the members of your church, your community. It's finding some folks who get addicted to this, and then they exploit the heck out of them. So lotteries make 70 to 80% of their profits from 10% of the people who play the lottery. Online gambling companies make 70% of their profits from 0.5% of the people who use the apps. The entire business model is based on the out-of-control player. The casual gambler is irrelevant. Fourth, the Lieutenant Governor touched on human sex trafficking, how it's a big issue here in Texas. If you want to increase the amount of drug trafficking, the amount of human sex trafficking in Texas, then you know what you do? You bring in gambling. Because as he talked about money laundering to the Texas Lottery, casinos, the lottery, online gambling, it's tailor-made for money laundering. So if you're trying to reduce these illicit businesses, then you do not want to bring in predatory gambling into your state. Okay, they go hand in hand. All right. So so human sex trafficking will increase in Texas by bringing in casinos. And the fifth one is people always say, well, Les, I know totally what you're saying. I get this, but aren't I paying lower taxes because of all this? If you were around here in 1990 when the Texas Lottery was passed, does anyone in this room think they're paying less taxes today here in Texas because you have a Texas Lottery? You're paying higher taxes in Texas today for less services because of the Texas Lottery and any other form of gambling that's legalized here. You pay even if you don't play. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, and here up in Irving, there's a big casino project targeting up in the Dallas area and across your state. They say, well, this is an economic engine. Okay. Well, first of all, Texas is like a model for most other states in terms of your economy. Like most states dream about your economy here. Okay, so you're rolling. All right, you don't need this business at all. But even if you did think this was a viable thing, this is right from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if you can read this, but so casinos leave far more addicts behind than they do jobs. Okay, so this is from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has 20,000 citizens who have self-excluded, who have voluntarily come forward and say, I'm addicted to these casinos. you got to ban me from them. All right? The casinos don't ban you. You have to voluntarily you, the addict, have to come forward and ban yourself. Okay? There's one of 20,000 people that have banned themselves. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. 90% of people who get addicted to gambling never even come forward for help. So that 20,000 literally is just the tip of the iceberg, okay? 20,000 people have self-banned. In the state of Pennsylvania, total jobs, full-time and part-time jobs, they have 10 casinos. There's 15,000 people that work at the state's casinos, okay? There's 35% more people who have banned themselves from the casinos than people who work there, including part-time jobs. Like, casinos are addict creators. They create addicts, not jobs. Next slide, please. All right, and so they're going to say, you're going to have these legislators stand up here and say, we're going to regulate online gambling here in Texas. We're going to regulate casinos, you know. And by the way, I'll share all these slides with you guys afterwards. So, you know, just when we're done, you get my email address and stuff will be on our website. But they'll say, we're going to regulate this to protect you, right? We're going to regulate regulate to protect your family, your coworkers. All right, let's look at what regulated, and I put that in quotes, what does it already look like here in Texas, all right? On your left, this was taken off the Texas Lottery website yesterday morning, okay? That was sold during the holiday season, all right? That's a $1 scratch-off ticket with a cartoon-like figure of a gingerbread cookie, all right? Who do you think they're marketing that to? Kids. Like, that's a government program. Okay, so when we talk about like the Texas Lottery has been a failed public policy here in your state. Okay, it's been a failure by every measure. But that's a government program. You know, I contrast it with Marlboro Camel cigarettes from the 1990s when every state attorney general sued them for the Joe Camel ads. Okay, like that's worse than Joe Camel. That's exempt from truth in advertising regulations. Okay, so. That's what it looks like. Christmas cookies marketed to kids. $1 scratch-off ticket. It's a low-price ticket. It's an entry point into the lottery game. So over time, they get you hooked. So you're buying $100 scratch-off tickets in the future. This next ticket, I talk about Texas when it comes to the lottery all over the country. That's a $100 scratch-off ticket. Okay? It's a $100 scratch-off ticket that the Texas Lottery sells in thousands and thousands of locations in this state in low-income neighborhoods. Okay? Most of these neighborhoods don't have banks, but you know what they have? They have liquor stores and gas stations and convenience stores that sell this. That's what the American dream represents. And when we talk about making America great again, it starts with changing the public voice of American government to the citizens of this country and getting government out of the gambling business. Okay? That's a government program. All right. And then lastly, Lieutenant Governor Patrick touched on this. Like, you know, we look at what regulated gambling looks like. That's the Texas Lottery, this huge scandal he's talking about, how they have these lottery couriers. You're getting these folks from Malta buying tickets. Like, it's a scam. It's a con, okay? Like, that's what it looks like. So the idea that you're going to bring in more extreme forms of gambling like casinos and online gambling, and you're somehow going to be successful with that, like, just look at your lottery. It's been a massive public policy failure. Next slide, please. All right, so the last question, again, I'm going to wrap up with this. People always say, Les, I get you. I understand you on this. But hey, you know, we can't put the toothpaste back into the tube, right? It's all done. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You know, we can't turn back $100 scratch-off tickets and all. Think about it. Forget this is gambling for a second. Let's actually take the example of toothpaste, right? Imagine there was a toxic toothpaste that was being sold to the American public here in Texas, in your community, okay? It was harming millions of Americans. It was addicting people. It was causing financial ruin, you know, family misery. It was causing your taxes to go higher. Any kind of social you can think of, you know, it was toxic. Would we try to put that toothpaste back into the tube? Of course we wouldn't. We'd take that toothpaste, we would throw it in the trash, and we would say, hey, we're going to hold the people that made this toothpaste financially liable for the harm they've caused millions of Americans, okay? And we get out of this business. We'd shut them down. We wouldn't try to put it back into the toothpaste. So anyway, so that's the solution. Roll it back because it's failed. And my last slide is, if you care about this issue, if you're passionate on this issue, just my final slide, if you could real quick, please. Is this one last, you just move that one last slide. That's our website, stoppredatorygambling.org. Please sign up, become a member. We're fortunate to partner with groups like Texas Values. It's an honor to be here and to be invited here to be partners with you. Texas has a bullseye on its back in this country because you're, in the eyes of the gambling industry, you are underserved. You don't have enough gambling here. okay? They're targeting you. We need to work together, and I hope we have a chance to do that in the future. Make this one of your top 5 priorities. God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay, get comfortable in your seat because the next speaker is going to introduce a speaker as well that is, just one of the most courageous people. So I want to invite up the Director of Government Affairs for Texas Values, the one and only Mary Elizabeth Castle.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Elizabeth Castle. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's very important that you're here to represent your values at your state capitol. That's your house, so you have every right to be there and walk the halls. And someone who can be a great inspiration to you is our next speaker. She's been a key grassroots leader since 2021 on our Save Women's Sports legislation. And it all started because of her personal story, because she herself was a coach of a women's team, but also is a mother of a young lady who has a full ride track scholarship and actually just came back from competing out of state. She was also the 2024 Kelly Shackelford Award winner, and she will speak today about why we must continue the fight for protecting women, not just in sports, but in other places. Please welcome Jen Evans.
Good morning. I am a woman, and I am one of the 2 genders God created. Just want to make that clear. I am a mom, like Mary Elizabeth said, of a female collegiate track athlete, a previous high school track coach, been an athlete all my life, and currently play on a women's soccer team up in Denton. These experiences have shown me firsthand the many advantages males have over females. I've been fighting to protect women's sports since 2020 when I heard about the 2 female athletes in Connecticut, Selena Sewell and Chelsea Mitchell. So I wasn't about to watch my daughter go through what they did. After meeting Beth Stelzer with Save Women's Sports and the team here at Texas Values, I was honored to fight alongside them by testifying 5 times in the House and 5 times in the Senate to keep males out of female spaces in sports. Thanks to the effort of Texas Values, Mays Middleton, and Valerie Swanson, SB 15 crossed the finish line in May of the last session. Yay. Unfortunately, the issue of men and women's sports is now following female athletes into their locker rooms and bathrooms, giving females no other option but to change and shower with male athletes claiming to be women. While SB 15 specifically addresses and protects women's sports, we have yet to pass a bill to protect women in bathrooms and locker rooms in Texas. You all know Riley Gaines, a former collegiate swimmer at the University of Kentucky, who competed alongside Thomas, a male swimmer from the University of Pennsylvania. Not only was Riley and her teammates forced to give up their awards, titles, and opportunities, but were forced to share a locker room with a fully exposed and intact male. She was not forewarned about this nor asked for her consent, clearly violating her right to privacy and should be illegal. This can also happen to any woman who works out at a gym that has gender-neutral locker rooms. This can happen to any young girl using a public restroom. This can happen to survivors of sexual assault, like Representative Mace, saying, "I've suffered at the hands of a man, and I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces." Last year, Speaker Johnson said all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings will be reserved for people of that biological sex and that women deserve women-only spaces. We deserve the right to our own safe, separate spaces, locker rooms, and restrooms. This is common sense legislation. The legislators voting against safe spaces for women are sending their own daughters and granddaughters into changing spaces with men. We must ask our Texas legislators to protect our spaces and fight for the true definition of what a woman is by writing them, calling them, and or showing up here at the Capitol to testify. And if you need help or possibly a little push, please reach out to Texas Values. They will fight with you. And there is another person fighting with you, and that is our president. As a woman, I am so grateful he is on our side working to turn the tide. I'm thankful he is publicly recognizing people like Riley Gaines and Peyton McNabb, publicly speaking about God's perfect design and creating two genders, defining what a woman is, and publicly telling America's children that they are not a mistake and are exactly the way God made them. In conclusion, I'd like to share a quote from Allie Beth Stuckey that I use as a Christian to keep fighting for truth. Politics affects policy, policy affects people, and people matter. People matter to God, therefore they matter to us. Christians tend to forget that politics is one way to love our neighbor, because the policies that we vote for have a real effect on people. You don't have to care about every issue, but the issues that affect our community, the issues that will affect your children and your children's children. As U.S. citizens, we have the right and responsibility to vote, to influence elections, which we did, and to raise a respectful ruckus for the things that matter. So next time you see an injustice, I encourage you to find a way to get involved and raise a respectful ruckus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Boy, you can only imagine what it's like as a parent to walk through something like that with your child, to know the attention, but to also know that that's what it takes sometimes. And not everybody is called to do that, but when you do, we'll be there by your side. I want to invite up one of our dearest friends and partner organizations with Texas Values that they've been there from the beginning and before Texas Values even existed. And their previous leader, Ann Hettinger, received a Lifetime Award last year from our organization because that's what they do. It's a lifetime of work, and I know that torch has been passed now to Jana Long for Concerned Women of Texas, Concerned Women for America of Texas. Okay, she'll say it. Welcome up, Jana Long. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, what a morning, right? I mean, Texas is a big state, and there's just so much going on. We need these kinds of groups and these kind of gatherings to pull us all together and for everybody just to realize, oh my goodness, here's what's happening, and we need to stay with it. We need to keep it together, right? And thank you to Texas Values, the Texas Values team, for bringing us here together today and for including us. They're right. We have been around for a long time and part of this Faith and Family Day event, and we appreciate that. My name is Jana Long, and I have followed, trying to follow in the footsteps of Ann Hettinger, who was here for many, many, many years. CWA has been active and alive for many years, since the 1970s, and we have thousands of members around the U.S. Our mission is to protect and promote biblical values and constitutional principles throughout prayer, education, and advocacy. Nationally, we do that through our Washington, D.C. office. We have a staff there, and along with our members across the U.S., we work on congressional policy. On the state level, CWA Texas has members in prayer action chapters, we have influencers, and we have Young Women for America on college campuses. And all of us are working hard, praying, and supporting our core issues. And here are our core issues, and you've heard about them all today already. Sanctity of life, defense of family, education, national sovereignty, religious liberty, sexual exploitation, and support for Israel. And over the last few Texas legislative sessions, we have been on the front lines working hard to save the lives of babies. We have spoken at countless events to ban biological men and women's sports, and we have held rallies at churches and college campuses in support of Israel. Our army of prayer warriors across our state have a power that grounds us and leads us to fight against all odds, and that power is prayer. This legislative session, we are continuing to fight for life, supporting more availability and resources for expected and unexpected pregnancies, for life-saving legislation that provides for enforcement of our current abortion laws. And the Defense of Family Unit, we will support legislation providing social media protection for minors and oppose legislation legalizing gambling. For the protection of children, yes, we're trying to be prepared. We all need to be prepared. It's going to be a fight. For the protection of children, we support legislation that protects the privacy and safety of students in schools based on biological sex, and legislation that protects our children from age-inappropriate content and pornography. And we support any legislation to fight human trafficking. We also support religious freedom through legislation to display the Ten Commandments in schools and in public places. Yes. So we invite you to go to concernedwomen.org if you want to know more about our programs and our involvement, and if you have information that you want us to share with you. We have Mary Smith here today, as she's our legislative liaison, and you'll be here at the Capitol too, and throughout the duration, however long that is. Again, we appreciate you all being here. We thank you for your support for Faith and Family.
Thank you, Jana. Well, we're going to keep going with our partners. We do have a few elected officials that are making their way over, but they're not here quite yet. So one of our partner groups, and whose history actually goes back a long way, but under different names, but that's okay. Sometimes people rebrand or to get involved in new efforts. And so I want to welcome up from Christians Engaged, our good friend, Ben Quine.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, what an honor to be here. Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan and his team, they're a powerhouse, you know. It's such an honor to partner with them. And thank you so much to Texas Public Policy Forum for hosting us today. Great to be here. So like Jonathan said, my name is Ben Quine. I'm Vice President of Christians Engaged. You may know our founder, Bunny Pounds. So she, another great powerhouse in the state of Texas. We are committed to discipling and mobilizing Christians across the country to pray, vote, and engage. Janet, thank you for sharing. You said it, prayer is our starting place. We have to start by prayer. You know, the problems we're experiencing in our country are really the symptoms, the ones we see on the news. Those are symptoms of a deeper spiritual problem that we have. Proverbs says there is a way that seems right to a man, or a way that seems right to a culture. There's a way that seems right to the smartest people, you know, to the elites. And if it's not based on the word of God, where does it lead? It leads to death. There is a way that seems right to man, but it leads to death. That's why, and I love what Lieutenant Governor Patrick said. He said we have to always stand up for the word of God. That's so true. God's word has the answers for life. And our ministry was founded really to answer two really key problems and questions that we have in our country today. The first is that Christians don't vote. You know, we're not engaged. And it's what an honor to be here with you, men and women who are engaged. I mean, thank you for what you're doing to learn and to get involved. So Christians, we need to be voting. The statistics say that on average across the country, it's like plus or minus 2% compared to the rest of the population. We're just voting right along with the rest of the culture. We should be voting. Every Christian should be voting, right? So to that end, Christians Engaged, a few years ago, we created the first Get Out the Vote system for all 50 states for the church. Yeah. So, you know, there are systems out there, TurboVote and other ones, but their data actually is owned and controlled by liberal nonprofit organizations who don't hide the fact that they're going to use that data to promote liberal causes. So we created a system that's kept safe and secure for the church. Any Christian across the country that signs up, we call it our pledge. Every Christian can make a huge difference by doing three things: pray, vote, and engage. It's simple, Every pastor in the country can teach this without splitting their church. Every Christian needs to do it. It's biblical. We start by praying every week. Hundreds of thousands of Christians pray together. For those who sign up, we send out 4 texts and 4 emails before every election. Not just the ones, the presidential one like we had in November, but 2025 is a key year for local elections. And the country is waking up to the fact that local elections are vitally important. I don't remember when I was a kid, I don't remember people talking about school board elections. They were super important then, and we're suffering the consequences now of not talking about that. So we're sending 4 texts and 4 emails before every election, including local elections. And in 2022, the midterms, we had 91% of our pledge takers vote. So if you could say, does anybody here know any Christians that aren't voting? Everybody, right? I mean, you probably have a laundry list of people that you wish would vote but aren't voting. Well, how would you feel if you could take 91% of them and get them to turn out to vote? We've got the tool for you. And we're so excited to partner with Texas Values because there's actually a web link where they can sign up and take the Christians Engaged pledge and then also connect directly with Texas Values. It's so exciting. Pray, vote, and then the third part is engage. So the first problem was that Christians aren't voting. The second problem is that Christians actually aren't thinking biblically. George Barna did a study. He said that 51% of Americans think they have a biblical worldview. You ask them, you say, do you have a biblical worldview? Of course. And then as he asked them more questions, he determined that in actual fact, that number of Christians who really have a biblical worldview is 6% at most. That's because we're not reading the Bible, we're not paying attention to what it says. We really can't be bothered. So the 2 problems, Christians aren't voting, and then when we vote just right along with the culture because we don't know what the Bible says. So that's what we're doing, is educating Christians, all across the country. What does God's word say about the basic issues? Look to Scripture. We're teaching basic civics. Here's how you can get involved, how you can make a difference. I talk to Christians all across the country every day. What they say is, I can't get involved in politics. It's such a dark place. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. So if you take the light out, what's left? It's darkness. That's why it's dark, because you're not in it, right? So anyway, we're so grateful to be here, so grateful for each one of you. I would love for you to connect with Christians Engaged. I'd love for you to share Christians Engaged with your friends, and especially with a webpage that connects them directly to Texas Values. I unfortunately, it's a random short number, so I probably can't give it to you. I can read it off, but the best thing would be to go to the Texas Values website, go to the christiansengaged.org website, get signed up. We would love to get you guys plugged in. We also have an amazing church partnership. So in local elections, 2025, most local elections are determined by 100 votes or less. That's 1 church or 2 churches, 3 at most, right? If a church signs up, we can get them the pledge, connect their whole congregation to vote, turn out 91% of them, Lord willing, and change these school board races. So connect with us, connect with Texas Values. You guys are amazing. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Okie doke. Another longtime friend who is doing great work and has been around the Capitol and seen a lot over the years. So I'm excited that their continued involvement in the work that we've been involved in the Capitol has created so much more value and broadened the message, but also the visibility of different folks that are involved in this work. But it comes from a national organization. So please welcome to the stage our good friend Don Garner for Faith and Freedom Coalition.
As he said, I'm Don Garner. I'm the Executive Director for Faith and Freedom Coalition here in Texas. I've been in that role for about 4 years. The organization's based in Atlanta, but has been doing work at the federal level for a long time, policy work. We're also the world's largest Get Out the Vote organization. We hit over 10.3 million doors in this last cycle. Just a tick under 3 million of those were bilingual. Here in the state of Texas, we hit over 1 million doors. At our annual meeting last year, I begged for mercy. I said, please, can we just send me like 500,000? They print these door hangers, and they have printers, they do it all nationally, except ours are specific for Texas, and then they mail them, and he said, no, Ralph, our founder and president, wants to hit 10 million doors. Texas has got to do 1 million of them. And they, in the end, printed 1.1 million door hangers. 400,000 of those were bilingual. Printed 500,000 church voter guides, of which we got out probably nearly 350,000 of those. So we definitely do a lot of work around the state to get out the vote. I want to make sure and commend Jonathan Sines and his amazing team. Everything they do well, and they make a difference. Absolutely. And I want to commend each of you for being here. I want to tell you, your involvement really does matter. You know, when conservatives see as many victories as we've seen over the past few years, it could be so easy to become complacent or say, what do we work on now? Or, oh, those folks that we elected are going to take care of it. Like me, I would imagine that most of you believe that God established government to reward those who do good and punish those who do evil. Wouldn't it be great if that's what always took place? Except we know for a fact that it's not. And it takes every one of us, because in fact we are, because of our form of government that our founding fathers gave us, we are the government. And we've all got to be vigilant to make sure that those things happen. Some of you may know the name Nathan Macias. He's now the head of Texas Homeschool Coalition, and we were having dinner last night. He began to tell me some stories that just got me really, really upset. I'll just say it that way. I just said, I couldn't be working on that because I get so upset when I hear about it. You know, we should be upset by the things that offend God, but we, as believers, need not be offensive. A good friend, Senator Brian Hughes, loves to say, and he probably didn't come up with the statement, but he'll speak of someone and say, yeah, they're a conservative. He's a conservative, but he's not angry about it. And I thought, you know, that's the way I want to be able to be. And many of you, perhaps some of you, in fact, though, have been in hearings, and I know that Jonathan and his team have time and time again. You can be crammed into a hearing room, a committee room, till 3 in the morning with a lot of people that are very, very broken. When you get into one of these hearings over a gender mutilation bill or a transgender bill or some of these kinds of things, and these things, you know, the issues themselves can make us really mad. And perhaps there could be times where we would casually make a joke of someone like that, a man who dresses very flamboyantly as a woman or something. But when you get crammed into a little room with a lot of those people for hours and hours, you leave there broken and you want to pray. Folks, we have the power of God at our disposal if we will simply, in meekness, yield ourselves to Him. It's not just about having influence and wielding it, hitting people over the head with it. We should be broken for people that are broken as people of faith. And we do have, I think, a historic opportunity right now to have an impact. And all these bills that perhaps so many of you are following, and you're trying to reach out to your elected officials, those kinds of things, that's telling me my time is up. I'm grateful for the time. Bless you for being here, and I hope you all have a great day at the Capitol.
Okay, we just had an elected official join us, so we're going to take this opportunity. Right after she speaks, though, so hold your breath. Right after that, we're going to pause for just a few minutes. We've got a technical issue, am I right, that we need to work out, or did we get it worked out? For Dr. Heim, this is the doctor who almost went to jail for 10 years. He's going to be joining us by live video because I think he's going into surgery later today, okay, not himself. He's going to be performing surgery. Oh, I see I've got another elected official over here. Okay, we're going to get both of y'all up. Hang on just a second. But I'll introduce Dr. Heim a little bit more in a minute. You don't want to miss, so when we take that break, don't wander off, okay? Please try to not leave the room, okay? Or if you do, get right back here because it's going to be live. His testimony is incredible, And it's a key of why we need to get some legislation done on these type of issues so we protect whistleblowers, but also make sure kids are not being harmed. And we've got courageous people like Dr. Heim that will stand up, even though he almost went to jail for 10 years. I'll let him tell that story. But we have in the green room a elected official, and then we have another member in the back of the room. We're going to bring them both up in just one after the other, and then we'll take that short break. So Joanne Schaffner is a state representative that is in her first session, and she beat an incumbent over probably some issues you care about. I'll let her talk about it, but she's off and running, and so glad that she's over here today. Representative Schaffner.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I am a freshman. I took out a 12-year incumbent. That's what East Texas is about, because we have the values of faith, family, and freedom. That's my personal core values. Turns out that's East Texas' core values as well. It's so incredibly important. And I just wanted to quickly talk about how, each one of us, this government is your government. Y'all are supposed to be involved. And my husband and I were just busy, tired of throwing things at the TV. And so we decided to get involved. He's retired, and I'm like, how about this? How about we run? How about we do this? But as we know, we have a very, very bossy God. And he makes a way to take some, little couple in East Texas that's retired. I was president of Nacogdoches County Republican Women. We discovered after the 2020 elections, there were some inconsistencies in that 2020 election. And so some friends of mine, we got together and we just did a little Facebook group, Nacogdoches Conservative Watch. And we started posting on there what was going on in our city, what was going on in our county, because that's what affects us the most, right? And so that's where we started. And we discovered that there was a new city manager pushing woke, DEI, and LMNOP, all in our city government of Little East Texas. Couldn't believe it. So we got people together, got voices together, went to City Hall. We ended up finding someone else to run for mayor, supported him, found some other city council people to run. They won. Check the box. Mayor, city council, got it, right? That's how you do it. Then next was the state representative who said he was conservative, but then we started posting his record. Can't run away from that. Turns out he wasn't too happy about that. And so we ran. And as God does, he makes it very obvious for you to do things, to be involved in things. And so we just ran the best campaign we could. And so on March 5th of last year, we said, okay, well, we're done. We went to the last precinct chairs, we voted, we went to all the polling places, and turns out, guess what? We won. So the next morning we woke up and went, oh my word, now what? Now what do we do? Because turns out there's no book and there's no YouTube video on how to do this. None. And so here we are today. And, I'm so grateful. I have been, my background is in hotel restaurant management, which is How May I Help You? And then 3 decades of ministry, which is How May I Pray for You? And so when the Lord put this total outside my wheelhouse proposition in front of me, he said, how about you see it as a ministry to East Texas? And I said, okay, I think we can do that. So if the Lord has us here for one time and we get to go back and be with our grandbabies, great. Or whatever it is. We are here at his service in every single part of our families and lives, right? We are here for his service, the end, right? We have I have a few bills coming in. One is House Bill 1717. Unfortunately, we have to have this bill, thanks to TPPF, first of all, for hosting, obviously, and for helping just really drive home the conservative values and the family and faith and freedom values. HB 1717 is a bill that prohibits child pornography being made by AI. We have to have this bill. Isn't that unfortunate? And so it strengthens the laws concerning that. I also have another bill, 2704, and there's several of us that have this bill. So we're basically, which one comes across the line is great. We just want the policy. We don't care about recognition. We just want the policy. Definition of a woman. You know, turns out, even though the Lord put it in Genesis, it wasn't enough. First page, right? Turns out it wasn't enough. So definition of a woman, can't be in women's spaces, whether it's a women's shelter, have to be biological women, whether it's a women's prison, biological women only in Texas. And then on to our families and our children especially. I have a bill that bans selling high fructose corn syrup in our ISDs. If you have seen all the MAHA going on, we have our Texas version of MAHA now. And it is absolutely so important. I have a couple of children that really, really love their Coca-Cola. So they're not, but however, this is, if your taxes are going to be paying for this, we don't want to be poisoning our kids. We have another one that tests for PFAS in the school lunches and ISDs because, we need to know. We already know that with what's coming across and all the Good Energy, the book called Good Energy that Callie and Casey Means wrote. Very, very important book. If you get it, look at the Tucker Carlson and the Joe Rogan interviews about them. It's absolutely fantastic of what is actually going on in our food industry, which, if you don't know, the cigarette companies, tobacco companies bought them back in the 90s. And guess what? They just took their scientists from the tobacco companies and moved them over to Nabisco to make our foods addictive. We already the Lord already put natural hormones to make us feel full. And they put chemicals in there in order to diminish those hormones so that we just keep eating and eating. And that's why I eat a bag of tortilla chips in no time. Another bill, let's see. Yeah, PFAS in school. So as well as several other bills and so many members, the one wonderful thing about being here, and I'm so grateful, is that, first of all, the Lord is here. The Lord is in that dome. It is absolutely in that dome. I host a women's Bible study on Wednesdays for women to come. It's just a kind of a break in the midweek. And there's so many believers in there that are authentically there for the right reasons, wanting to represent you as they represent the Lord. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you all. Don't worry. Austin is only 15 minutes away from Texas, so you'll be home soon. Thank you.
Great boots, by the way. Did you see her boots? Gotta love those. Come on. Okay. Yeah, right. It never hurts to have a little bit of style over at the Capitol, okay? All right, I got my Lucchese's that I bought secondhand. Okay, so State Representative Tom Oliverson made his way over. I won't say a lot about him. There's a lot I could say, and I probably wouldn't stop talking, but he was the author of the bill last session that protects our kids from having sex change operations, puberty blockers, all that stuff. And he's continued to do great work. He's working with us on some conscious protections and all kinds of other great stuff this legislative session. Please welcome Chairman Representative Tom Oliverson.
Well, thanks, y'all. It's a pleasure to be with you. I have to say that having been in this building maybe 20 some odd times over the last 8 years, I have never actually been in this theater before. Isn't this nice? And I had no idea. We were always do something in the conference room on the top floor, so this was kind of new for me. Well, welcome to Austin. Glad that you're here fighting for faith, family, and freedom. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is good to see. I also see some folks that I haven't met yet, which is even better to see. So glad that we're filling this up and that you're all here. Session is in full swing. We are working. We took our picture today on the Texas House floor. We're actually going to be hearing some pretty important bills next week. I understand that the school choice bills may be up for hearings early next week, so that's an important move forward. The Senate is working. They're passing a lot of really good bills. How many of you have been following what's going on with the lottery? Some of you. So I will say, I will confess that I'm somewhat new to this conversation, but my eyes have been opened. Did y'all know that last year there was some foreign interest that they think may have a connection to organized crime that laundered something like $25 million through the Texas lottery using these online couriers that are able to print out these tickets one by one, but online so you can get millions of them at a time? They bought 93% of the tickets for that evening, and not only did they launder their dirty drug money, but they were able to win a jackpot of, I think it was $80 million, $85 million, something like that. Does that sound right? Those of you who heard the story? Crazy. 95. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So unbelievable corruption there. Do you know who the third largest, you know who owns the third largest online printer of lottery tickets in Texas is? DraftKings. In a session where we're talking about legalizing gambling in Texas, and we're already having corruption issues with our lottery commission, just imagine what happens. I read a story recently, or an article, somebody did a study. They were looking at Google's online search data in states that had legalized gambling, and they were analyzing for the search term, I think I have a gambling problem. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as those laws passed, there was a twofold increase when a casino was opened in terms of the number of searches in that state of people saying they think they had a gambling problem. You know what it was for sports betting? 5 times the number. It was a 5-fold increase in the amount of people that felt like they had a gambling problem. So sports betting is even more harmful than casino gambling. It's all harmful, and I don't know about you, but I'm opposed to all of it. But that's just sort of me. I'm kind of consistent that way. I don't know how many of you know a radio talk show host by the name of Mike Gallagher, but he said on his show one time, they're talking about legalizing marijuana, and he said, name for me one societal, well, he said, I'm opposed, but name for me one societal benefit that comes from the legalization of an intoxicant. And I might change my mind. Nobody could name one, because there aren't any. There is no benefit. Whatever money you raise in taxes ends up being spent in regulation, treatment, family issues, family violence issues, and other various things that come out of that. And the same is true for gambling. The other thing I'm gonna say on this is, because I know I'm more known as the transgender guy around here, but do a lot of things. But actually, it is fascinating to me that I completely forgot what I was going to say. I'll think of it in a minute. Well, so one of the other things that I've been working on that we filed again this year, and now that we've kind of got a lot of the end-of-life decision-making issues done on the Public Health Committee, we think this is the session where we're going to get it done, is in Texas, we are, with the help of Texas Values and Alliance Defending Freedom, trying to massively expand conscience protections for healthcare workers. Not just doctors, but nurses, secretaries, security guards, students, everybody that might be involved in that healthcare process. And the theory is very simple and straightforward, and that is that we want moral and ethical people practicing healthcare in our state. Am I right? Because moral and ethical people are capable of thinking about someone other than themselves, and they're capable of putting our best interests as patients ahead of their own personal financial benefits and needs. We want moral and ethical, we want people who believe that an almighty God created the heavens and the earth, and that there is such a thing as absolute right and absolute wrong, and that the sanctity of life is something that should always be respected. Those are the kind of people we want taking care of us, our children, our parents, and our loved ones. And yet, states across this land do everything they can to discourage people with strong moral convictions and a belief in God and moral values that are immutable, because there is such a thing as absolute right and absolute wrong. They discourage them from even getting involved in healthcare, and when they do, they threaten them with employment decisions. You're going to hear in a few minutes from a gentleman, a doctor, who did what he thought was right at great risk to himself. And thank God he did. But he should have never been threatened in that way for doing the right thing. He should have been able to say, look, these treatments that you're forcing on children, these mutilation treatments, are against, they're literally against the very nature of God. God created the male and female, and you don't go back and forth in between, and you certainly don't use surgery to change all that. So we actually have that bill, and then just as a sneak peek, we haven't filed it yet, but we actually have a separate bill that Senator Hughes and I are working on we're calling the Dr. Ethan Heim Act, that specifically deals with the situation, and that's been a collaboration with Texas Values. So we're looking forward to getting that done. We want to make sure that this whistleblower type situation, that we never have a situation where somebody's medical training and career is at risk because they blow the whistle on a hospital that's basically destroying people's lives. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about is that, so we filed a bill yesterday. You always know, as a person who's fighting for conservative values, for God's order in things, and when they start using terms like Nazi, Christian nationalist, or they just start saying like, you're a monster and I hope you go to hell and things like that, right? So we've got all that going on right now because yesterday we filed a bill that I think you'll probably like. It's House Bill 3817. And what it says is that if you misrepresent your sex assigned at birth on a government document, that's a criminal act and you're going to jail. And unfortunately, we have some folks and have some mental illness issues, and I hope that they get the treatment that they need, but they're quite angry, and so they're wishing violence on me and my family and my colleagues and everybody who's associated with this bill. As I said, God created the male and female in the beginning, and that is what Scripture says. So I think we need to be clear about this. There's not 23 genders. It's not a fluid thing. You don't wake up one day and say, today I think I might be a woman, but tomorrow I'll probably go back to being a man again. That's not the way it is. And government should not indulge people's personal mental delusions and fantasies. And realities must be respected. So anyway, super glad that you're here. Thank you for being a part of Texas Values. We really couldn't be very effective up here or very successful. I would not have passed SB 14 last session had it not been for Texas Values, and I mean that. That man right there literally camped out in my office all session long and gave me whatever help I needed. And so I'm glad that you're here supporting them, and please continue to do so. And with that, God bless you, and y'all have a great rest of your day.
Okay. A distinguished senator from North Texas has entered the building. I'm going to have Mary Elizabeth Castle from our team introduce the next speaker.
I have the distinct honor of introducing Senator Angela Paxton. If you're from the Collin County, Plano area, then you're very familiar with her work. She has been championing so many bills to protect children from inappropriate, sexually explicit library books. We just had a successful hearing last week, and I have great news to announce that her bill, SB 13, was voted favorably out of committee just 2 days ago. So please welcome Senator Angela Paxton.
I like this picture. I'm going to keep it forever. It's 5 years ago. I think I was not yet a grandmother there, and now I've got 5 grandchildren and 1 on the way. So, well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. I know you guys have come from all over the place. Hello, Deb. Good to see you. Deb texted me last night and said, I'm coming, I'm packing. And I was like, that could mean a lot of things, you know? So, but thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting Texas Values. And by that, I mean the organization, but more deeply, I mean Texas Values. Faith and family are Texas Values. And I will tell you, this is my 4th session. By the way, you came on picture day for the House and the Senate, so we're all looking our best for you, okay? We fixed our hair and everything, but Texas Values is what this session is about. And this is my 4th session. And each session, I've been able to work on legislation that is really meaningful to me personally and beneficial to families and to children in our state. And for those of you who may not know, I'm an adopted child. I am the result of an unexpected pregnancy. And my birth mother chose life for me. And I just had my 62nd birthday on Valentine's Day. My adopted parents were wonderful, dedicated, and very intentional parents. I think partly because I think they knew they might not ever have had the opportunity to have children. And so I have a little brother that's also adopted. When I was growing up, my mom and dad told me that the stores decorated for my birthday. I believed it for a lot longer than I should have. And then, of course, paying it forward, I told my children that. And now I tell my grandchildren that. So my grandkids call me Baba. And a friend of mine gave me a list of grandparent names around the world to help me think about my grandparent name. I was like, there was so much pressure, like picking my grandmother name. I was like, this is a bigger deal than naming my first child. I mean, you know, this is my name, right? And so I was really thinking hard about it when our daughter Maddie was expecting with our first grandchild. And so this friend of mine gives me this list that he pulled off the internet, and it was grandparent names around the world. And so I'm kind of looking through, and I come across Eastern Europe, and I see Baba, which can mean grandmother or grandfather or old woman, but mainly grandmother or grandfather in various countries. But when I saw Baba, I was like, that is like literally the first sound babies make. If I am Baba, I may actually beat Mama and Dada. And I'm 5 for 5, okay, so far. So I have chosen wisely with that. But you know, being a grandmother, being a mom of 4, really does drive my work in the Senate. I came from the profession of teaching and school counseling. I'm the first educator elected to the Senate in more than 20 years. And from the moment that I got here, we have really been dealing with things going on in our schools, things going on with our children in and out of school. So I appreciated Mary Elizabeth mentioning last week we did pass out Senate Bill 13, which protects children from sexually explicit material in school libraries. One of the cornerstones of this legislation is that it requires that the school boards approve material before they purchase it. Now, this is groundbreaking, apparently, but I'm really thankful for the support of my colleagues. I think you said it passed out 9-1, and I believe we're going to pass this on the Senate floor. I would like your help on this bill. Last session, we've done some things to kind of shiny it up because we had some time to work on it since last session, but we passed this bill out of the Senate last session. But it never got a hearing in the House. And so I will make sure that you guys know. In fact, you can follow me on Angela Paxton. Angela Paxton TX is my social media. But if I would love for you to really engage and encourage our House to pass Senate Bill 13 to protect children from sexually explicit material in school libraries. So I'll keep you posted on that. You know, last week we had a really great day of parental rights in the Education Committee, and there were 4 other bills that I wanted to share with you. One of them is an educational Bill of Rights for parents. And this bill just takes all of the parental rights around education, puts them in one place, but it puts it in the Bill of Rights. And that's important because to overturn a law, just statute, which is where these rights are right now, it just takes 50% plus 1. To overturn a constitutional amendment, it takes a 2/3 vote of both houses. So this strengthens parental rights. Another bill that we passed, or that we heard in the Education Committee last week, was a parental rights training manual for school boards. What do you think? And this will be great for parents and for school boards because many parents don't realize what their rights are. This will put them all in one place, but it will also, we will make sure that school boards realize that they are accountable to the parents in their district. One last bill I'm gonna mention is, it came to our attention as we were studying these matters during the interim that although we require school boards to adopt policies reflecting the will of the legislature, which is our job as we reflect the will of the people, it turns out that just because they're required to adopt a policy, they aren't actually required to implement and follow it. So, in another of my bill package of bills that I call Don't Make Me Come Down There, we have filed a policy adherence bill that requires school boards to implement the policies that we require them to adopt. What do you think? It's the little things. It's the little things. So I want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for supporting Texas Values, this fantastic organization. Thank you for supporting Texas Values in your heart, with your voice, with your hands and your feet. And thank you for your encouragement as I continue to fight for families and fight for the children of Texas. God bless you and have a great day.
In the spirit of trying to make America healthy again, I think it's time for a break. So we're going to break for 5 minutes. So we'll be back at 11:18.
break, but we had to. So if we can call people back to order, who's ever outside, tell everybody to get back in, because you don't want to miss this next presentation. Kick somebody out of the bathroom, whatever. Just don't go in the wrong bathroom, okay? I'm just saying. So I want to invite up to the stage our Director of Policy, Jonathan Covey, to introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great to be here. Good to see everyone. Glad you're here with us. We're super excited about this next speaker, and he's going to join us virtually by video. And, you heard Dr. Oliverson talk about the gender modification, gender transition surgeries and treatments. Well, some of the most important people when these things are going on are the eyes on the ground, those medical professionals, those healthcare professionals that are able to tell us what is really happening in these hospitals. And so right now we're going to hear a little bit from Dr. Eitan Haim, the doctor who was the whistleblower at Texas Children's Hospital, who's been persecuted by the Department of Justice for telling us that Texas Children's Hospital was doing these harmful surgeries and procedures. So we're going to pull him up, and if y'all would, give him a big hand.
You're up, sir, if you can hear us. Oh, hi there. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep, yep, great. Yeah. So my name is Eitan Haim. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. I know Vanessa Sivich is there. She's great. You guys are going to hear her talk. And I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person just because I'm on call today, so I had to work. But I was listening to this thing earlier, and I can't believe that Dr. Oliverson and Brian Hughes are actually going to sponsor a bill called the Eitan Haim Act. That's the first time I've heard about that, so that's pretty shocking. But it's really amazing to think because I was a surgical resident working at Texas Children's Hospital because I was a resident at Baylor College of Medicine. And during that time, I found out that they were lying about shutting down their transgender program. They said they shut it down in March 2022, but they not only continued it, but they expanded it, right, into like a multidisciplinary clinic. They were implanting puberty blocking devices into children as young as 11 years old, right, putting them down this path where they would become a chronic medical patient. So I was the anonymous whistleblower in a story released by Christopher Rufo, which proved that the hospital was lying about it. And then Vanessa was the second whistleblower in that story. We didn't know each other at the time, but the whole thing is kind of a separate story, much longer but fascinating. And in response to that, a federal agent came to my home 4 weeks after, right, for exposing the fact that the largest children's hospital in the world was lying to the public about a program that was manipulating, mutilating, and sterilizing healthy young children. They were going to try to send me to prison, and that's exactly what they did, right? They tried. And I was facing 10 years in prison, 4 felonies, and the indictment came in June of 2024 when 3 heavily armed U.S. Marshals showed up to my home at 7 a.m. like I was some type of, cartel drug kingpin, right? And over the next couple of months, over the next, 7 months, we fought this case in court, and over $2 million, an unimaginable amount of pain and suffering. But it was on January 24th of this year that the case was finally dismissed. And what happened with that case is there's so many layers of corruption that it's hard to even imagine that's possible in the United States. But the most important thing is that they were willing to use HIPAA, which is a law that is supposed to protect the privacy of patients. And they reinterpreted the law for the first time in American history to make it not about patients, but they were saying the victims were the hospital and the doctors, Baylor College of Medicine. And the prosecutor who was bringing this case had severe financial conflicts with both PCH and Baylor College of Medicine. She had to step down because of it. And not only that, but the people I had to get evidence from was TCH and Baylor College of Medicine, right? So of course, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did I have to spend to get evidence from them? And not only that, but the judge, his ex-wife, right? She trained at Baylor College of Medicine and TCH. She has contracts with TCH. So when you think about the risk to the conscience of the individual within these big hospital systems is so great that if you cross the ideological line, you do the right thing, and you're in this position like myself or Vanessa was, then the federal government at the time under the Biden regime was willing to use the entirety of their resources to destroy you. They're willing to work so far outside the boundaries that a prosecutor who has all these conflicts is willing to reinterpret HIPAA in this radical way and bring it into court where a judge who's completely corrupt is willing to take this for months to try to send me to prison for 10 years. And, if that's hard to believe, I mean, believe it, because, I'm sitting right here in front of you. It's like these things happened. So what has to happen from here is that, it's great to hear that Oliverson and Hughes are working on this bill, because something concrete has to be done to protect people in our position. Because it's very hard to identify these either ethical conflicts or criminal conduct within hospitals, because everyone knows that the institution is going to go after you, right? They're going to destroy you. I mean, the culture of silence is so strong that people don't even speak up. When I was a surgical resident, I had maybe 3 or 4 people I trusted to talk about these things. We would actually meet in dark corners of the hospital, and that's actually true. There was like dark corners that we would meet, and we would talk about these things. It's just wild. But I realize now, especially, it's something that was kind of theoretical then, but now it's as concrete as anything else. It's so important to be able to stand up for the right thing and to know that you're not going to get crushed by the federal government. Because how else are hospitals going to be held accountable? The reason these institutions have perpetuated so much misconduct and in some cases so much criminal activity over the past 4 or 5 years is because there was no accountability, because people who were working there didn't believe that they could act in accordance with their conscience. So what they did, what so many of us did for so long, is just we stayed silent and let the weight of corruption destroy our souls, until at some point a very few number of us just said no, the line has been crossed, I'm never going back. Because I realized, when you live with these lies and corruption, it destroys you, it eats you up from the inside out. And it's easy to, rationalize it on a day-to-day basis. But over the course of years, you become someone completely different. The ideals and the principles that, we all believe in, at some point we look in the mirror and we realize that we never lived those things. And that's why it's so important that when you identified it, you did something about it. And it just turns out that of all the thousands of people in the hospital who knew this was going on, but, stayed silent, Vanessa and I were just 2 people who who spoke out. And if you think about everything that's happened because of that, it's mind-blowing because, the day after my story came out, 24 hours after, Texas passed SB 14, which was the law that banned transgender interventions on kids. And a couple of Democrats voted in favor of it, partially because our story came out. And because I blew the whistle, Vanessa blew the whistle. And because we blew the whistle, Ken Paxton had initiated a investigation into the hospital. And then because of all of that, Vanessa's story came out where she allegedly the clinic had been fraudulently using billing codes to get insurance reimbursements for interventions that would not been covered otherwise been covered by insurance. And that's a huge story. That's massive. Still pending in whichever way, but it goes to show how much can happen. And over the past couple of months, AG Paxton has filed 3 suits against doctors who have been allegedly violating SB 14. So it goes to show that a small thing from people who are no one, right? Like we were just random people. I didn't even have a social media. I mean, I had a small group of friends, and just because Vanessa and I decided to speak out, I mean, there was this entire downstream sequence of events that, I hope, and not I hope, I know for a fact had changed Texas, and for the better, because now you're going to have a whole generation of kids who are going to have protect gender, right? Which is, gender is kind of like this made up word. But if they fall into this, it's going to be way more difficult in Texas to do this, right? It'll have to be underground. And because of that, there's such a greater chance that this just resolves, that they're never going to be put down the path where they're going to be chemically castrated, mutilated, where their entire life is going to be destroyed. So, I'll end it with that, but I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen.
We do have one more speaker on this issue. I didn't want Dr. Heim to steal her thunder too much, but Nurse Vanessa Sivage, she was the second whistleblower in the situation with Texas Children's Hospital. She blew the whistle on things like fraudulent billing, the things on harmful gender transition surgeries, and she's now starting a new organization, the president of Protecting Texas Children, and is dedicating herself to protecting kids from these harmful surgeries and procedures. So if you would help me welcome Nurse Vanessa Sivage. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all are so kind. Thank you. Man, I would not be standing in front of you today if it were not for the courage of Dr. Eitan Heim, whom you just heard from. Courage is contagious. And so I just want to recognize his efforts, his just monumental efforts in the protection of kids in the state of Texas. I would not be here today if it weren't for him and his courage. So my name is Vanessa Sivage. I have the great honor of serving now as the founder and president of Protecting Texas Children. Our mission is to safeguard the innocence of children by affirming biological truth and advocating for legislation that will champion the health, safety, and well-being of children so they can fulfill their God-given potential. Before I tell you about the work we are doing, let me tell you a little bit more about my story. You heard most of it from Dr. Heim, but I'll just fill in just a few gaps just for a few minutes here. 10 years ago, I became a registered nurse, born and raised in Houston, and I started working at Texas Children's Hospital several years ago. And last year, I came forward publicly to blow the whistle after Dr. Heim to expose the hospital's illegal use of taxpayer dollars to cover cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers for minors. I showed and worked with journalist Christopher Rufo to reveal how the hospital had engaged in a pattern of deceit and ultimately fraud in concealing their robust transgender program from the public. And despite the FBI coming to my house, as well as the FBI coming to his house and threatening my career and my safety, I understood that my calling as a believer in Christ, as stated in Ephesians 5:11, propelled me to take a step of obedience in alignment with biblical truth, as stated in Genesis 1, where God beautifully and purposefully defined our identities as male and female made in his image. And that truth is worth defending no matter the cost. And so I came forward to reveal the fraud and misuse of funds at the hospital, and 2 months later, I was fired. But thankfully, that is not the end of the story. I'm so thrilled to announce the recent launch of Protecting Texas Children. As I said, we are an advocacy organization with a few key priorities this session: protecting children from sexualization and exploitation, protecting children from harmful and destructive gender ideologies, and advocating for genuine mental health that will affirm the intrinsic worth of every child and how they were created by God. I have the privilege of partnering with organizations like Texas Values and meeting with legislators, many of whom are already championing, that you have already heard today, championing the defense of kids, and emboldening people around the state to take action in defense of the most vulnerable. And so I have not shared this publicly before, but Dr. Heim is actually on the board of Protecting Texas Children. So he is such an ally. We are here for this fight to protect kids in the state of Texas. So I want to encourage each of you to visit our website, protectingtexaschildren.com, and to partner with us, sign up for our newsletter. And if you have any questions, I would love to connect with you after. Thank you so much.
All right, one of the privileges of doing this work is that we have so many partners and friends, and we also have friends at the national level as well. So I'm introducing Melanie Israel. She is a visiting fellow in the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and Family at the Heritage Foundation. She formerly was working for Senator Ted Cruz in his office on Capitol Hill, and in the Senate Judiciary Committee. She received her bachelor's degree in history from the University of Texas. She has a lot to share about faith and family issues, but especially pro-life issues. And she'll tell you about her recent work and editorial on chemical abortion. Please welcome Melanie Israel.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. As she said, I had been working more on federal policy, actually living up in the DC area for about a decade. But I am happy to say that as of a little over a year ago, my family is back in Texas. So now when I talk about our elected officials here in Texas, I get to say our elected officials, which is just fantastic. I'm so glad to be back home. I am going to actually set a timer on my phone so I can make sure that I don't go over, because you have so many wonderful speakers coming here today. I'm going to talk briefly about chemical abortion and hopefully put some things in context of what we see happening at the national level that is also obviously affecting things at the state level. So some of my work at the Heritage Foundation involves tracking chemical abortion and what it's doing to women and girls across America. So I think when a lot of people think of abortion, they think of a surgical procedure, but actually about 60% of abortions are not done by a surgical procedure. They're done by taking a pill, often when you are at home alone, not under supervision of a doctor. And now, thanks to President Biden, you can actually order these pills online and have them shipped to your home without ever actually interacting with the doctor at any point in the process. This is obviously very dangerous. According to the label for the abortion pill, roughly 1 out of 22 women will end up at the emergency room with complications from these pills. So What does this mean in the broader national context? Well, we've got more than half of abortions happening due to these pills, and that rate started skyrocketing back in 2016 when President Obama weakened safety regulations on these drugs. We had the Dobbs decision a couple years ago, which of course was wonderful, and states like Texas were able to really step up and lead the way to help protect life. And in fact, your heartbeat law had taken effect even earlier, which was fantastic. And so that's been able to show us some really, really interesting things in the actual incidence of abortion, both in Texas and in other states. So when we look at the CDC's most recent annual abortion report, it's the first year that we get to see about 6 months of that post-Dobbs landscape where all of these pro-life laws spring into effect. And unfortunately, I wish I could say that the number of abortions across the country declined significantly, but it didn't. What we're actually seeing is that for the past 2 decades or so, there had been an enduring decline in the number of abortions that's been happening each year. However, due to chemical abortion, that enduring decline slowed down, and now, unfortunately, in a lot of states, the number of abortions is actually going up. So what did we see happen in New Mexico in 2021, which of course was the year the Texas heartbeat law took effect? We actually saw that about half of abortions in New Mexico were being done on women from out of state. And we also saw that the number of abortions in places like Louisiana and Oklahoma increased after Texas had enacted their heartbeat law. And then, of course, we get into 2022, Roe is overturned, other states are able to enact their pro-life laws. Well, now more than 60% of abortions in New Mexico are being done on women from out of state. And we're seeing similar dynamics in other, I guess, so-called border states, places like Colorado, Florida, North Carolina. All of those are places where the number of abortions actually started going up dramatically after Roe was overturned. So I think it's really important to keep this context in mind that, yes, states like Texas are leading the way to protect women, girls, unborn children from the violence of abortion, but we can't simply say that abortion has returned to the states and that's the end of the story, because of course we all know that the pro-life movement hasn't been fighting for the past half century to overturn Roe to simply say, well, things are going relatively well in Texas, and for you guys in California, sorry. That is obviously not what the pro-life movement has been trying to achieve. So this is going to require both state and federal action. So to that end, we are encouraging the FDA to revisit the safety of mifepristone, the abortion pill. There are steps that they could take right now that would save lives, things like ending the policy of mail order abortion drugs, things like collecting the data of these complications so that the abortion industry can't lie and say that these drugs are safe when what's actually happening is they're just not collecting the complication data. Also, states need to be able to continue stepping up and addressing this issue of these abortion drugs that are flowing into their states. Thankfully, our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is involved in some litigation right now involving an abortion doctor up in New York State who has been breaking Texas law and sending drugs here, and New York is refusing to cooperate in those proceedings. There's a similar case out of Louisiana. And so to an extent, we can't necessarily do anything as that litigation is playing out that is going to change things immediately, but there is still other things that we can do. We need our policymakers to make sure that emergency room doctors in Texas are equipped to report the complications that they are seeing from the women and girls who are being harmed by these drugs. We need to make sure that policymakers are supporting the pregnancy centers who are getting inundated with calls from women. And in this new dynamic, they're not calling and saying, I have an abortion appointment at Planned Parenthood next week. They are calling and saying, I have the abortion pill in my hand right now. That is an entirely different dynamic. So we also need to make sure that policymakers are encouraging education and support for things like abortion pill reversal for those women who take that drug and immediately regret that decision, and they want to be able to try to counteract the effects of that abortion drug. That is something that doctors can help them with, but we can't help people if they don't know that that is an option. And policymakers can increase penalties for the abusers, for the unsupportive parents, for people who coerce and force women and girls to take these drugs against their will. That is unfortunately a gap in current law that needs to be closed, and thankfully some states are starting to look at ways to do that, and that's another way that Texas can help lead the way going forward. So again, we can't necessarily control what's happening at the federal level. We can't necessarily control what states like California and New York are doing to undermine our pro-life laws, but that doesn't mean that we in Texas are powerless. And if you really want to have the most effect, go and volunteer at your local pregnancy resource center. Find out what your church is doing to support moms and babies and girls. And frankly, just pray for our policymakers that they will be able to have courage to continue leading and making these decisions that really, really do save lives. So thank you all for being engaged. Thank you for coming today. And to Texas Values, thank you for letting me be a part of this wonderful gathering today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a visitor who did our pledge earlier, but she didn't get to talk for just a minute. She really likes this group and our work, so we're going to give her another opportunity. Representative Hillary Hicklin.
Thank you, guys. I want to pull up a scripture that I read this morning. It says, people lose their way without wise leadership, but a nation succeeds and stands in victory when it has many good counselors to guide it. That's Proverbs 11:14. And I love it because I think it really speaks to what Texas Values is doing. You are all part of those good counselors. Just because you're not sitting in a place of an elected official, the role of being a voice of truth and praying for opportunities to speak and influence in whatever realm the Lord has called you into and opened the door to is so valuable. I'm a mom of 4, so 4 school-age kids. My youngest is 5, my oldest is 15, and protecting kids is really what got me out of my house. I'm passionate about protecting our children and their innocence. I got really sick of finding pornography in our public school libraries. And I got really frustrated with the individuals, the adults, who were in positions of authority and wouldn't get it out. Something that seemed so clear and so obvious. So, it's just been really amazing that when we align our hearts with the heart of God, how the doors fling wide open. And I think it's so important to keep our hearts in check. Don't ever let anything come in place of your relationship with the Lord. It is the most important. He is the source of everything we need. He is the source of wisdom. He is love. And if we're operating outside of that, it is so easy to get it twisted. And it's so easy to step into ourselves or into our flesh and think, oh no, this is right, but is it righteous? And if there's any threat to our movement as believers, it would be operating in our rights when Jesus gave up his rights for the sake of righteousness. And there's no way that we can know it on our own. It's only through that humble submission to the Lord and saying, Lord, I see this and this isn't right. This is not of you. This is not your kingdom. Use me in the way that you'll use me. If we're partnering with him and his strategies, we cannot fail. But it's in those times where we take up our own weapon or rally cry, and we come under any other banner that is not his, that those efforts will fall flat, and they should. They should fall flat. So my challenge to you, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for all being here, for all being part of that, for praying for us, for speaking words of wisdom that you're hearing in those times with the Lord, the highlighting things in Scripture and words, and constantly bringing us back to this source of truth. And I am so grateful for this organization that gathers and continues to shine a light on those things, and also that's compelled by love. That Scripture, we are compelled by love. And it's so much bigger than us. It's beyond this moment. It's beyond the 89th session. We're fighting for things that are eternal, that will bless generations, and that are being good stewards with what the Lord has entrusted us. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for Texas Values. God bless you. God bless Texas.
As it's been said before, a very big issue this session is protecting women, the definition of woman, and protecting them in their private spaces. So we have a very special panel and trio of very special guests. We will have Representative Ellen Troxclair, the author of the What is a Woman bill. We'll have Representative Andy Hopper, who will tell a very troubling story of something that's happened in the Capitol, and a new hero and someone who's speaking out on this issue, his staffer, Claire Frugia. So if they can all come out now. But you'll be excited to hear this panel. Thank you so much.
Hey, y'all. Thank you very much for coming today. So one of the things that has come before our attention, and I, first of all, just want to very much thank Texas Values for bringing it to everyone's attention in this room, is to realize that of all the places in this country, in this state, where we would expect women to be safe in their own private spaces would be the Texas Capitol, right? But that's not been the case. So I want to let Claire Frugia, who is our legislative director, and I want to let her tell her story of what happened in the Texas Capitol just shortly after she started.
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Claire. I'm from Oregon. And this issue kind of came to light a couple weeks ago when I was in the bathroom. And I'd finished using the restroom and I was standing in front of the mirror making sure that like everything was buttoned and zipped up and everything. And I hear like a male voice from behind me go, "Well, I like your hair." And I kind of turned around and there was a man in my bathroom. And it was pretty obvious that he was a man, and it was very unexpected, but we had seen him because his office is very close to ours. So we had seen him across the hall, so I kind of thought something like that might have happened. But when that actually did happen, it was very shocking. And so we kind of had a conversation about his hair, and he told me that he used to have to get haircuts all the time back when his hair was short. And I was like, "Well, you mean back when when you were a man?" But anyway, and then we were talking about how he's trying to grow his hair out, and then we finished, and I accidentally called him sir at the very end, and then I kind of ran out of the bathroom. And then I go back to the office, and I kind of was joking about it with my friend, and then I talked to our chief of staff about it, and he was not taking it in a joking manner like I was. He was very angry about it. He was emphatic that this was wrong and that it should not have happened, and he brought that issue before my representative, Mr. Hopper, and they both were seeking to defend me more than I was. And I really appreciate that about them, and it meant a lot to me.
Well, so there's a lot of things that are coming before us in our legislature this session, so I think that are very applicable. So what I want to do is, like, Ellen Troxclair is a patriot that will tell you about a bill that she has that will help address this problem.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, because when we are in this fight to stand up for women and to stop women from being erased, what I hear from the left is that this isn't really happening. This isn't really an issue. Why are you making an issue out of something that's not real? And a party that claims to believe women, to trust women, to support women, actually does exactly the opposite. When they have young women like this stand in front of them and tell a story about something that impacted them, whether it's in a restroom, whether it's participating in a sporting event, whether it's something as simple as collecting data for things that impact women, like domestic violence, and making sure that our government records are accurate. They want to silence you. They want to silence me. And thank you so much for the men around us who have stood up for our rights as well. It's an honor to serve with Representative Andy Hopper and to have his full support for my bill, House Bill 229, to define once and for all what a woman really is. You guys know what a woman is? Do you think it's that complicated? Do you think even your children could probably tell you the difference? Do you think we've known what a woman is for many thousands of years, and only in 2020 did we decide that we weren't sure about it? Yes. All right. Well, hopefully this session, this is going to be the time that we actually put what Trump has already put in executive orders, what Governor Abbott has already put in his executive orders, and make this law once and for all, that women are real, women are defined, women's rights matter, and we are going to pass House Bill 229 through the Texas legislature. Thank you.
So there's a couple of other initiatives that I think are really important to bring out and make you guys aware of. So there's House Bill 239 by Valerie Swanson, which will protect women in all their safe spaces, whether government, private, whatever, in the state of Texas. And I think it's also worth pointing out that the Texas Capitol, the Texas State Preservation Board, Texas House Administration should not let Valerie's bill beat it to the floor before they take action in our Texas House. And also, like, this is a little controversial, but I am not going to shy away from that. Brent Money, who is also a patriot that sits in the next hallway from me, and I've become very close friends with him, has a wonderful bill, which is House Bill 3399, which is going to basically broaden the definition of transgender surgeries that previously were just, saying, hey, in Texas it's illegal for kids. He's saying, hey, these are legal for everyone. So what do you think of that? Well, y'all, thank you so much for coming, and I just want you to guys to please pray about the situation. It's a huge deal. Once Claire came out and gave her story, we learned from a number of other staffers who came forward and said this has happened to them. Michelle, who is the chairman of Williamson County, it happened to her last year. This is not a new thing in the Texas House. And the reality is if there's one place in this entire country, in this entire state, that should be safe for women, it should be the beacon of hope and prosperity for Texas, the Texas Capitol. Thank you all very much.
Okay, I know we're getting close to noon. We do have another elected official that has joined us, so I think we've got just enough time for him to work in before we hit 12:00. So that means you've got less than 3 minutes to talk. Okay, I'm just saying. No, you having a great time? Learning something? Okay. See a lot of friendly faces. I'm not taking questions. I'm not trying to be rude. Hang on a second. I got to do this introduction or we're going to run out of time, but I'll take questions right afterwards. Please welcome State Representative Brian Harrison.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Howdy. Man, with an applause like that, I really should just shut up and leave the stage here. It's all downhill from there. It's a great to be with y'all this morning. I want to start with just saying maybe the two most important words you're going to hear from me today, which is thank you. I mean that. There's a lot of other things you could be doing in the middle of a week than being down here in your state capitol trying to pressure, I hate that you have to pressure my colleagues into doing the right thing. But let me ask you this. How many of you think that Texas should be the #1 state for freedom and liberty in America? We should. And you know, we have, as Texans, we have a reputation for leading in freedom and liberty. But I'm here to tell you, guys, I could come here and I could just say everything is sunshine and rainbows. But in my conscience, I think I'd be doing y'all a disservice. I think Texans deserve the truth about what's going on in their government. Do you agree with me on that? Because guys, while we have a reputation for leading in freedom and liberty, I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, for far too long, we have just been coasting on that reputation. And it is about time that we start living up to it. I mean, I think that Texas should be the #1 state in America for low taxes, low regulations, limited government, private property rights. And speaking of private property rights, how many of you think it is time that we get our state on a path to eliminate property taxes in the state of Texas? And guys, we can do it. We can do it. We have a $24 billion surplus. We've got a rainy day fund that's almost got $30 billion in it. Guys, I hate to tell you this, the numbers that are being thrown around for the size of our property tax package this session they're just small. They're paltry. They're talking about $3.5 billion. Well, let me ask you a question. If I see there's a lot of ladies in the room, a lot of ladies carry purses. My wife always does. If somebody came up to you and robbed you, took your purse, and then carved it up into thirds and handed you 1/3 of your purse back, would you thank the robber? You would not. The only reason the state of Texas has a surplus, ladies and gentlemen, is because we overtaxed you. We are sitting on $24 billion of your money, and as far as I'm concerned, the state of Texas should give the surplus back to you. Every penny of your money should go back to you. And they told me to be quick, so I got a whole list of things I could talk about, but look, I have put out something, we left copies in the back, what I call the Texas First Liberty Agenda. It's a comprehensive plan to make Texas lead the nation once again in freedom and liberty. One thing I'm going to talk about, though, is in addition to things like, I think we're going to make some progress on this on school choice. How many of you know that schools are for education, not for indoctrination? Yeah, that's right. How many of you believe parents should be in charge of where their kids go to school? All right, we've got to make some progress, but when we talk about universal school choice, guys, what that should mean is that every parent gets to choose where to send their kid to school, because every child deserves a quality education. And I'm going to tell you something, guys, we got to get these bills a little better. Because right now, as we stand right now, if they pass, only about 1%, maybe 1.5% of Texas students are going to qualify for an education savings account. Do you think that's good enough? No. Every child deserves a quality education. So that means the state of Texas should empower every parent with education freedom. And one more thing, guys, guys, how many of you know that this woke mind virus has infected just about every aspect of government across the country? Well, I'm here to tell you, guys, Texas has not been immune. Guys, how many of you are happy? I'm going to take a quick second. How many of you are happy that we have an America First president back in the White House? Guys, I had the high honor of serving as President Trump's chief of staff at the biggest cabinet agency during his first term, and I'm so happy to see him back there. And how many of you are thrilled to watch the progress he's made at undoing this racist DEI in our country? Yes. Well, guys, I think the state of Texas should be leading the fight against DEI, but we're not doing it. The state of Texas is spending billions of dollars on facially, racially discriminatory DEI and on liberal gender ideology. So every single morning on my Twitter feed, and I know it makes the people in the Austin Uniparty very mad at me, but every single morning I post an example of one state agency or some public university that is using your money to promote DEI or to indoctrinate children into liberal gender ideology. And let me tell you something, I have had it. I am sick of your hard-earned and my constituents' hard-earned tax dollars being weaponized against you, against your values, and against your children by funding this dangerous ideology. And let me know if you agree that Texas should stop funding, zero funding to any state agency promoting DEI or liberal gender ideology. All right. They're giving me the high sign here. I got to go. I could be here till tomorrow talking to you about all the ways in which Texas should be leading. But if I had to sum up in one sentence what I'm trying to do, and not just for the 200,000 Texans that I represent, and by the way, I'm going to say it to your faces here, okay? I've got 200,000 bosses. Not one of them works under the Pink Dome in Austin, Texas, okay? I work for 30 million Texans. And if I leave you with just one thought, other than go get a copy of the Texas First Liberty Agenda, guys, in one sentence, what I'm trying to do every single day in the Texas legislature on your behalf, I just want government to be as irrelevant to your lives as possible so we can be as free as God meant for us to be. God bless you. God bless the great state of Texas, and thank you for letting me come out and say hi to you this afternoon. Thank you so much.
All right. That was to make sure you're awake, wake you back up. I know they dropped the lights a little bit in here. Lunch is here. I do not have instructions on how we're doing that, so if someone does, please bring them to the podium quickly or text me or something. While someone's figuring out what I'm supposed to say, if there is anything to say other than go, but I'm going to invite up a member of our team, Pastor Jorge Tovar. He leads our Church Ambassador Network of Texas to bless our food. Senor.
Let's bow your heads wherever we're at, please. Lord, we thank you and we praise you. We love you, Lord. We thank you for the blessings you give each and every one of us. We thank you for the provision you provide to us. We ask that you not forget the orphan and the widow with bread on their table, just like you bless us, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we have what? I don't know what you're. Why don't you come up here if you need to tell me something? Oh, please pick up your lunch in the lobby. Chick-fil-A box lunch, and there's a bottle of water. You can eat in here. Am I right? I'm not. That's my understanding. So we got a little backed up on some of our schedule, so we're gonna try to maybe squeeze a few things in while you're sitting down to eat. And then before we leave to go over to the Capitol, we're gonna give you some instructions on how we're gonna try to group you up and then get you pointed in the right direction when we get over to the Capitol. Did I miss anything?
We're gonna do both sides of the table so you can grab lunch
Okay.
on either side. So we
Yeah.
get people through.
Both sides of the table, you can enter or whatever to grab your lunch. Okay, enjoy. Testing. While y'all are settling back into your seat, I want to allow a friend of mine to come up and tell you a little bit about his work. Matt Long leads up the Fredericksburg Tea Party, also has a weekly radio show that I'm on. Well, it's daily, I think he has his radio show. I'm on Wednesday morning, but he got a lot of people here today and continues to drive a lot of people towards our work and the Capitol. So, Matt Long, come on up.
My name's Matt Long, and I was a past president of the Fredericksburg Tea Party. Angela Smith's now the one that's in charge. She needs a big hand. But I have a daily radio program. I've been on the air about 6 years now. I started my citizen engagement at the Capitol about, it was 5 sessions ago. And I have about 3 sessions ago, toward the end of the 87th, the local radio station, the Hill Country Patriot out of Kerrville, said, we need your voice on the air. And so I have been on the air 5 days a week, and for almost 6 years now, it is Christian, conservative, Texas politics with a focus on citizen engagement. That's my point every single day, is how can I get you involved? How can I put you together with folks like this, people in the room? And every day I take the program. It is live. You can hear it streaming at hillcountrypatriot.com. But most every day when I get home, if my schedule isn't too tight, I clean out the commercials and put them up on podcasts. And I believe I'm approaching about 1,000 episodes now. And you can find them anywhere there are podcasts. Just search for The Matt Long Show. It is Texas all the time. I do a 15-minute segment on Tuesday with Pastor Greg Young, which is, we get to do national and international stuff. But the rest of the time, it's all Texas. Jonathan is on every Wednesday at 9:15, and if he's not available, it is Mary Elizabeth Castle, or even one of the other Jonathans, Mr. Covey back there. So hillcountrypatriot.com is a place to find it, and if you spot me at the Capitol, I always have a pocket full of cards. And be glad to get your message out on the air if you if you have something to say to the Hill Country and the rest of the state. I got a lot of listeners across the state on the podcast. So thank you very much, and we'll see you at the Capitol.
While we're allowing our team to eat for a minute, a few of them are going to come up and try to work in a little bit of part of the training. I always think it's good to prioritize the elected officials because you can hear this training and from us any time of the week in a variety of ways, but it's harder to get an opportunity to hear from them. But I didn't get to recognize all of our staff and that are helping. I think maybe some of them have left the room, but Ashley, who's doing a great job with all the AV and sound work in the back, Megan Benton, and wherever she went, helping out in a variety of ways today. A lot of the folks out in the hallway, Sarah Murphy, who else is over there? I saw Alex Woodby. I'm going to forget somebody from our team. Lisa Acalese, thank you. And a lot of great volunteers that we acknowledge you, by the way, when you were out, Ashley. So Ashley's back. Now you can give her a round of applause. But I'm thankful, too, of a lot of the groups that partner with us. And, you know, sometimes it's the same group. Sometimes it's different groups, depending on what issues we're working on or, you know, where people tend to focus. And there's groups that are not partner in the event but are certainly a part of what we do. And groups like First Liberty Institute, Kelly Shackford's group, that Kelly is on our board, and we work together a lot. And so, so know that it's great to have those friends. And so, also, well, one of our board members just left with his family, Brian Russell, and his wife Julia, and I think the Beans might have gotten up, John and Cheryl Bean. Okay, I missed them. They might be coming back John is on our board, and you might know the name Cheryl Bean. She ran for a Texas House seat up in Fort Worth. Came really close, but so we'll see if she'll be back. She's helping a lot now to push back against predatory gambling. So are the presenters ready that are going to do the legislative training? Okay. That is going to be led by Jonathan Covey and Mary Elizabeth Castle. So come on up.
All right, based on Covey's hand motions, I guess I'm going first. So we have, as we have stated and have proof, we have good legislation this session to protect women in their private spaces. But just to go a little bit on the background of why we need this legislation, as you saw, we had a clear example of what's happening at the Texas Capitol with a young woman who faced that issue of having a man enter a private space. But we know that this is not just something in the bathrooms, and it's not just something in the locker rooms either. There are many private spaces that are being invaded by men due to the ideology of gender identity. But we know that this is not a popular opinion. We know that people who identify as transgender make up about 1% of the population. And we're seeing growing and growing concern from people of all political spectrums of having these men in women's restrooms. So according to a recent survey, and I believe we have a slide on this, so if you can go through the slides, please. 91% of people polled believe that public spaces should include separate toilets for men and women, and only 5% said all facilities should be gender neutral. And that's surprising because if you walk around downtown Austin, most restrooms in downtown Austin are gender neutral. The same study revealed that 56% of women say they feel generally uncomfortable with using gender-neutral restrooms. And I believe that percentage would actually be higher. Especially, I believe 100% of women in this room would be uncomfortable with gender-neutral restrooms. So the legislation that we have covers many places, but we know that this issue is covering many other areas besides restrooms. Like I mentioned, there are male prisoners who have been charged with sexual offenses, have been allowed to transfer to female prisons under the request that they now identify as a woman. Senator Ted Cruz has been key on this issue as well. He spoke out on this issue whenever Sarah Netburn was considered for Senate confirmation as a federal judge. Sarah Netburn actually sent a male rapist prisoner to be housed with women in Texas prisons. In Canada, a male identifying as a female checked into a woman's domestic violence shelter and climbed in bed and assaulted a woman. So unfortunately, this is an issue that is evading all spaces besides restrooms and locker rooms. So having legislation to clarify that women have the right to their sex-designated restrooms, locker rooms, prison cells, and domestic abuse shelters will protect women from physical and emotional harm. And this legislation would fine entities. The specific bills by Representative Valerie Swanson and Senator Mays Middleton would fine entities for noncompliance and give the Texas Attorney General the power to enforce the law. And so when you're going to the offices today, you want to make sure that you're advocating for HB 239 by Representative Valerie Swanson, which is the Texas Women's Privacy Act, and SB 240 by Senator Mays Middleton. HB 239 by Representative Valerie Swanson now has 77 co-authors in the Texas House. So we put out a press release, and you may have received an email from us yesterday that it had 76. But we checked moments later after sending that email, it now has 77. There's no reason that all 150 members, I believe, could sign on to this legislation or vote for this legislation. It does already have bipartisan support. A Democrat has signed on as a co-author, but this is just common sense legislation. You know, this is not 2017. We are, according to the polls, in a very good spot to get this passed so we can protect women in their private spaces. But it's not that just that piece of legislation. One thing that will be key is good definitions in the bill as well. You know, it should be as simple as saying biological men should not be in women's spaces, but sadly, in the year 2025, it's not that simple. So we will need to define what is a woman, and that's why we invited Representative Ellen Troxclair to talk about her bill, HB 229, which is the What is a Woman bill. And I believe, yeah, that's the next slide. And so you already heard about that story, so next slide. So HB 229 would define woman, man, male, female, and sex, and it will define male and female based on their primary function to reproduce, which serves as the purpose of the two sexes. So you can go to the bill and see the very concrete definitions of male and female. And for any of you who've been to the Texas Capitol, there will always be that one person who says, you know, what about intersex? So this bill covers that as well. So it says that any rare disorder of sexual development is not an exception to the binary nature of sex, which we know is truth. It grants legal protection to defend women's single-sex spaces and opportunities. So very similar to the Texas Women's Privacy Act, but it's a combination of the Texas Women's Privacy Act and, say, women's sports legislation all in one. So this would include sports, prisons, locker rooms, women's domestic violence shelters, scholarships, anything that you can name that is sex-specific and depends on the correct definition of man and woman. It protects the integrity of government-collected vital data statistics. So when you read the bill, the very bottom portion of the bill and key component of the bill is that it applies the definitions to vital statistics, and Representative Ellen Troxclair described that as well. So you may remember this summer, and maybe you didn't, went under the radar, so the Department of Public Safety and the Department of State Health Services both said that they would stop allowing people to change their sex on their driver's license and their birth certificates. So this was a policy that they implemented, but as we know how government works, policies can change. So we need something very definitive in law to make sure that this is permanent. So this bill would basically reinforce those policies and make sure that any data collection, birth certificates, driver's license, very concrete on what is man and woman, and that you cannot change that on those documents as well. So this legislation is very much needed. These are some key talking points for when you're talking to legislators about this information. We have one-pagers on them as well. And I believe I had a few more slides, Ashley, on this issue to help with the argument. So this is a slide showing how many states have passed legislation defining man and woman. I believe we're now at 13. Texas, we don't have a law yet, but we're working on that. So Representative Troxclair's bill was introduced last session, but has not been passed. And I believe I have one more slide. And many of you have heard of this great news from our president. President Trump did, on the first day of office, which is very great, define woman and man and said there are only two sexes. So that was very exciting news. I was actually in DC on that day when he issued that executive order. But we can't leave it to that. We can't just have an executive order. We do need to have state law that's permanent and applies to our state. So yes, we're very happy that we have this backup from the federal government finally, because we, for 4 years, had a president who disagreed. So glad we have this reinforcement, glad we have this executive order. But this executive order is just proof of how we can get this legislation passed. And if you want to go to find this executive order when you're talking to legislators, I think that would be a very good thing to bring up to why we can pass these laws in Texas. And did I have one more slide? And that is it. So if you have any other questions about these bills, please come see me, and we have some good things that you can hand to legislators to help you talk about them.
Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. So obviously one of the points of going over, all getting together like this and going over to the Capitol is that we have more momentum, we have more power to be able to talk to legislators, right, and sort of get our opinions out there and persuade them of things. So we have a couple of other legislative priorities that we want to talk to you about. And I will say that the one Mary Elizabeth spoke to you about, the Women's Privacy Act bill, that's our top legislative priority. This one, HB 2816, this is medical conscience protections, religious freedom for healthcare professionals. This is number 2. So what we believe is that every Texan should have the freedom to operate according to their ethical and religious beliefs. That includes all healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, any type of healthcare workers that work in the industry. And 1 in 5 medical students say they have chosen not to practice in a certain field because of hostility toward their beliefs in that area of practice. And 9 out of 10 religious doctors and nurses and other medical professionals say they would rather stop practicing than to have to violate their religious beliefs. So this just says, as a doctor, as a healthcare professional, they don't have to do something that goes against their conscience, their religious freedom. And sometimes it's not even a religious motivation. Sometimes it's a conscience objection, a moral objection, an ethical objection. But doctors take an oath to do no harm. And if they feel like they are doing harm, then that totally upsets the entire career that they've gone into and their entire reason for going into that career. So in Texas, we actually do have a protection for doctors who don't want to perform abortion, but this is a much broader piece of legislation. So what this would say is doctors don't have to perform gender transition surgeries or lose their licenses for doing so. Doctors don't have to do puberty blockers. They don't have to do contraceptives or sterilization or assisted suicide. And here's something that you don't think about too often. Even though in Texas, doctors can't be forced to perform abortions by their employers, by their hospitals, or whoever they're working for, that's not to say that they can't be forced to refer their patients to someone who can perform an abortion, right? And so this would say that they don't have to do that as well. So this is a broader religious freedom bill. It's something that we're working on. And there are a couple of exceptions. One is for emergency medical treatment. Of course, if someone's in the middle of dying, the law says, and federal law in particular, says that they have to be treated. And then there's an exception for life-sustaining treatment, folks who are on ventilators and dialysis machines and so forth, mechanical breathing machines. So you can go ahead and you can take a look at the bill summary in our packet we've sent you. If you want to take a look at that, it has some more talking points that you can use as you go door to door and talk to your legislators. But HB 2816 by Dr. Oliverson is a very important piece of legislation for religious freedom in Texas, and we want to get that passed this session. He's actually filed it the last couple of sessions, but it hasn't moved very much, and we really want to make it happen this session. And we're actually the ones who are working. He announced earlier, talked about the Dr. Heim Act, so that was our idea, and we're working to help get that written up and filed. And Dr. Oliverson and Senator Brian Hughes will be filing that legislation. So we're really excited about legislation to help prevent medical professionals from being retaliated against, or whistleblowers from being retaliated against by their employers as well. So that's going to be a great piece of legislation. So the other one that we testified on recently, and guys, it's been a busy week. I'm just telling you, we've been at the Capitol a long time this week already, and then we get to cap it off by the most exciting thing of all, getting to see you guys. But the Ten Commandments bill was filed by Senator Phil King in the Texas Senate. And of course, this is just to put a plaque or a picture of the Ten Commandments in each classroom in Texas public schools. Yeah. Now, how can we do that, and why should we do that? Well, of course, the Ten Commandments are the source of all moral law. The Ten Commandments are where we derive not only American common law, but they go back before Blackstone's Commentaries of the Laws of England, in English common law as well. And you see that the Ten Commandments are sort of the basis for basically everything we believe, punishing evildoers and upholding justice and rightness. And the Ten Commandments not only are sort of a basis for Christianity, but they're also widely used and widely accepted in a number of different religions as well, right? Including Judaism, including even Islam. So they all use some form of the Ten Commandments. But the reason we can do this is because of the 2022 case in Kennedy v. Bremerton. This was, if you guys remember, the Coach Kennedy, the praying coach, football coach case where he wanted to kneel and take a knee and pray voluntarily in the football field as a football coach, not forcing anyone to be a part of it. And then other students started joining with him, and the school district didn't like that, and they said, no, you can't do that. That's a violation of the Establishment Clause. And they took him to court. They fired him. And he actually took them to court with Alliance Defending Freedom and went to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, we're actually getting rid of what's called the Lemon Test. This is the legal test that the court has used for a long time to determine whether or not Establishment Clause violations have taken place. And they replaced it. Actually, they didn't replace it. They went back to what they had used in the very beginning, which was called the History and Traditions Test. This was the legal analysis that they started out using at the beginning of our country for the Establishment Clause to know if government is coercing someone into something, a government speech is coercing someone, a government is establishing religion. So they went back to the History and Traditions Test, which is considered, going back to originalism in the Constitution. So that's a great move. And of course, what is more historical than the Ten Commandments, right? There's nothing that has more history. Even if you guys remember hearing about the Northwest Ordinance, which was a law that was passed here in America the very same day as the U.S. Constitution was being passed, and it talks about our Savior, divine, and religion being essential to our nation. And so, of course, the framers with that history believed. Even George Washington, in his I think it was his Thanksgiving proclamation, he said, I'm giving thanks to the Lord of all who is, was, and will be. So, of course, everyone believed, and religion was considered to be an essential component in American civic society. So the Ten Commandments just make sense to put in our classrooms to help remind kids and to return our laws to the moral laws that the Ten Commandments upholds. And then finally, SB 11, which is the, I just talked about Kennedy v. Bremerton. This is we call it the Coach Kennedy bill. And this bill, this is to protect the right of school employees like Coach Kennedy to be able to pray, have a private religious observance or expression on school grounds. And we talked about, a sort of a return to originalism, and history has had, and I forgot to mention early state laws as well. So Virginia had a law that invoked the name of God, talked about the name of God. Of course, executive proclamations like George Washington's Thanksgiving proclamation. But these two bills kind of go together. So when you're going to office to office, if you want to talk about both of them at the same time, they're both possible because of the Kennedy v. Bremerton decision. They're both possible because the U.S. Supreme Court said we're abandoning Lemon v. Kurtzman, and we're going back to the History and Traditions Test, where we look at the history of our country. We look at what was the original intent of the founding fathers, and that's what we decide should be Establishment Clause and validated under our Constitution. So as you go talk to offices, take a look at the one-pagers we have in our packet on these issues. I think we have one for each one of these. But if you have questions, be sure to grab our staff, and we can help talk you through some of it as well. But what we're going to do is we sort of have divided it up sort of into 4 sections here. So this section over here, everyone sitting here, you'll be in section 1, okay? Half of this section here, you'll be in section 2, section 3, and section 4, right? So if you're in, so remember 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you're, you'll go over to the Capitol with one of us corresponding to that number. So if you're in section 1, I want you to find me, come get me. I'll walk with you guys over to the Capitol once we end this entire session. Yep, Jonathan's taking number 3 over here because I think his mother is over there, and Mary Elizabeth, if you're in section 2, walk over with Mary Elizabeth and she'll get you set. And then if you're in section 4, where's Lisa? Lisa Acalise is our new development director, and she's not in here. Okay, we'll let our strategic policy associate, Megan, who's also not in here, walk you guys over, but we'll get her up here to wave at you so you know who you're looking for before this ends. But when we end, sort of find your group, and then we'll make our way over to the Texas Capitol and get to visit with some of the good folks over there. And you heard from some really exciting people, some state reps and senators as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if you have your phone on you, if you want to, go ahead and go to the Texas Legislature's website, go to whorepresentsme.com, and you can put in your address and you can find out who represents you, what district, so that as you're going over to the Capitol, you'll know, because you want to try to talk to your state rep, right? You want to talk to someone who represents you. A lot of times they'll give you more attention. They'll sit down with you. They'll take time with you, and the staff will as well. So pull up whorepresentsme.com, take a look, put in your address, and it'll tell you who represents you at the Texas Capitol. Thanks, guys. We're looking forward to talking with you more. Group number 4, Megan, step over here. Group number 4, this is Megan Benton, our Strategic Policy Associate. You guys find her when it's over.